Jack woke up in Marvel as Tony Stark, only to die in the final battle with Thanos, despite all his attempts to survive. But to his surprise, he reincarnated again in DC Universe as a newborn baby in the Wayne Manor with his memories intact. He has a new goal. He will create the Legend of Batman in his way, a fusion of Batman and Iron Man. But technology in this world is too primitive compared to the Marvel Earth. Follow Jack's journey as Bruce Wayne in this reality of DC, as he brings new inventions into this low-tech world and fights crimes ruthlessly. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn in DC as Batman x Iron Man? Part 1. If you enjoy this type of content, please avenge the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Remember to check out the original story linked in the description. Without further ado, let's get into the legend of the Dark Knight. Arc 1. The perfect arc reactor. As the night covered Gotham City in darkness, a feeling of unease filled the air. Secrets whispered in the alleys, while towering skyscrapers stood as ancient guardians over the city. It was a place that embraced the darkness, where heroes and villains danced an endless dance. In one of the wealthy suburbs, inside Wayne Manor, a quiet stillness was interrupted by the cry of a newborn. The cries echoed through the grand halls, announcing the arrival of a child. But this child was different. This child was Jack Lance, or so he believed. Jack's eyes opened, his gaze filled with curiosity beyond his years. He lay in a cradle, wrapped in soft blankets, his tiny fingers reaching out as if searching for something he couldn't quite remember. The room was softly lit, with the moon's pale beams seeping through the curtains, creating ethereal patterns on the nursery walls. Jack felt the weight of the moment, as if he were witnessing his own birth from a stranger's perspective. Wayne. He heard the nurses' voices, faint but unmistakable. He was certain he heard the word Wayne. As he looked around the room, a profound realization washed over him, a merging of memories, a blending of identities. He remembered being Tony Stark, fighting against Ultron and Thanos. But now he was about to embrace a new identity, possibly one of the Waynes, maybe even Bruce Wayne, the young heir to the Wayne fortune. Who am I? Jack whispered to himself, his voice barely audible. It was a question that echoed deep within his mind. Was he Jack Lance, Tony Stark, or a Wayne? Or perhaps a combination of all three? His journey was just beginning, and the layers of his existence were as intricate as Gotham's dark past. In this new chapter of his life, one thing was certain. He had to uncover the truth about himself and find his place in the complex tapestry of the multiverse. 3 years later, life at Wayne Manor had settled into a semblance of normality, or as normal as it could be in a mansion filled with ancient secrets. Jack, or rather, the amalgamation of his past identities, had grown in this mysterious world. As time passed, Jack's personality evolved into a unique blend of traits from his former selves. He retained Tony Stark's clever wit and talent for inventing futuristic gadgets. Yet, he also embraced his identity as Jack Lance, a student of physiology from Earth where Bruce Wayne and Tony Stark were merely famous characters from comic books. And of course, there was Bruce Wayne, the true owner of the body Jack now inhabited. He was well aware of Batman and his heroic tales from the comics he had read in his past life. Jack had made up his mind to become the new Batman, but he knew he had to start as soon as possible. Oh well, what the heck, I'm just a 3-year-old kid, he thought to himself as he played with the remote-controlled Batmobile that he had put together using spare parts from Alfred's toolkit. I can't be Batman just yet. I'll think about that later. Right now, I need to prevent my parents' death. I have 5 years to prepare for it. Bruce, a voice called out, interrupting his thoughts. He looked up to see his parents, Martha and Thomas Wayne, standing in the doorway. What are you up to, sweetheart? Martha asked, her voice gentle and warm. Playing with my Batmobile, he replied with his usual serious expression that's too serious for a kid of 3 years old. They are early and look jolly today. Something good must have happened. He wondered. Bruce was unlike other children. He possessed strength and intelligence beyond his years. Instead of indulging in typical childhood activities, He spent his days engrossed in books far beyond his age level and preferred watching news and science programs over cartoons. This impressed both Thomas and Martha. Thomas entered the room and sat on the floor beside him, while Martha stood by the door with a smile on her face. "You got it working?" he asked, peering over to get a closer look at the toy car. "Yes," he replied, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "I even made a few improvements." Martha watched the scene with a smile, her heart warmed by the sight of her son playing so happily. She felt a sense of pride, knowing that her son was already showing signs of a brilliant mind. "You know, Bruce, if you keep this up, you might become a great inventor one day," Thomas said, his voice filled with pride. "But remember, there are other things in life besides inventing, and your education is very important too. You'll have to work hard and study very diligently if you want to succeed in life." "I am a great inventor," Bruce said, pointing at the Batmobile. "I invented this. How many 3-year-old kids can do that?" Thomas laughed and ruffled his son's hair affectionately. "Yes, you are a great inventor, Bruce, but I meant more like building things that will change the world for the better. You have some time to spare, Dad?" he asked. "I have some ideas I'd like to share with you." "Sure, Bruce. What do you have in mind?" Thomas replied. "You can talk all you want after dinner," Martha interrupted, her voice firm but gentle. "It's time for a meal. I made your favorite, spaghetti and meatballs." "Oh boy. Spaghetti and meatballs. My favorite," Bruce exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with excitement. He ran to Martha and hugged her tightly. Martha smiled and wrapped her arms around her son, hugging him close. "Come on now, let's go eat before it gets cold." "Sometimes I forget, he is just a child." 3 years old is still 3 years old, Thomas thought, watching the scene with a smile. After dinner, Thomas and Bruce sat down to talk while Martha went to the kitchen to clean up. Bruce took out a sketchbook and showed his father the designs of several inventions that he had been working on. "These are the car models I have been working on," he said as he pointed to the drawings. "The first one is the Batmobile 1.0, the second one is the Batmobile 2.0, and the rest are all supercars." These are impressive, Bruce," Thomas remarked as he examined the drawings. "Did he draw all these? Such details and creativity." He mused in his thoughts as he studied the drawings intently. He must have spent a lot of time on these. He really is a remarkable child. All of these techs are too advanced for his age. Some of them don't even exist yet. "I know, right? They are going to be awesome when I build them," Jack said with a grin. "The Batmobile 2.0 is going to be so fast, no one can catch up to it. But first I have to make the Batmobile 1.0 work properly. I am sure." Thomas's eyes fell on a folded paper inside the drawing book. He unfolded it. It was some sort of blueprint of something. His brow furrowed in confusion. The blueprint contained scribblings, drawings, and formulas that were unlike anything he had ever seen before. Equations and symbols danced across the page, their purpose shrouded in mystery. "Bruce, brush your teeth and go to bed," Martha's voice came from the kitchen. On it he ran, brushing his teeth with a vigor that matched his youthful enthusiasm. As he stood on a stool in front of the bathroom mirror, he couldn't help but think how little he was. Who would have known that he would get another chance to live? "I wonder how big this multiverse is. But since the multiverse is real, and I was reborn 2 times in a row, then there must be a way to travel between DC and Marvel Universe, and someone other than me might also have experienced this rebirth thingy," he mumbled to himself after washing his face. "If I can just figure out a way to travel between different dimensions, I might just be able to find my way back home." Author's note: this will be a slow burn. Things you must know before you continue: 1. MC kills. 2. Harem. 3. Slow burn. 4. Slightly late. R18 content. 5. This is a crossover DC x Marvel. We will see both worlds. 6. AU/OC7. Don't cry if you don't like Harem. Just leave. 8. No NTR. 9. No Pokemon Harem. 10. 10-year time skip after the canon event. 11. 10 Rings of Makluan. The souls will be all female versions. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm golden glow into the room. In the Wayne Manor, where secrets and mysteries intertwined with daily life, the day began like any other, with a sense of purpose that radiated from its occupants. Downstairs in the kitchen, Alfred Pennyworth, the trusted butler and guardian of the Wayne family, was preparing breakfast. He moved with a sense of efficiency and grace, a man who had perfected his craft over the years. As Alfred worked, He couldn't help but think about the unusual circumstances surrounding young Bruce. The boy's rapid development and keen intellect had not gone unnoticed. He had seen the drawings and blueprints that Bruce had created, and they were nothing short of remarkable, especially for someone of his age. Master Bruce does possess an extraordinary mind, he mused to himself, placing a plate of pancakes and fruit on the table. He glanced at the clock. It was almost time for young Bruce to wake up. The sound of footsteps from the hallway outside the kitchen drew his attention. He turned to see Thomas Wayne, dressed in a sharp business suit, rushing towards the door with a briefcase in hand. "Good morning, Master Thomas," Alfred greeted, his voice carrying a note of formality despite the early hour. Thomas paused for a moment. "Morning, Alfred. I'm afraid I have an early meeting at Wayne Enterprises. There's a crucial deal to finalize." Alfred's gaze remained steady as he assessed the situation. It wasn't uncommon for Thomas to have business matters that required his immediate attention, but this morning felt different. "May I prepare a takeaway breakfast for you, sir?" he offered, already envisioning a neatly packed assortment of food that would fuel Thomas through his busy morning. Thomas hesitated, clearly torn between the urgency of his meeting and the thought of a proper breakfast. "I'll grab something on the way." Alfred's concern for the well-being of the Wayne family was evident in his eyes. "Master Thomas, I understand the importance of your work, but Mrs. Wayne will be worried and possibly angry if you skip your breakfast again." Thomas sighed, realizing the truth in Alfred's words. "I don't want to face Martha's wrath. Please, prepare a takeaway breakfast for me. I'll eat it on my way." "Very well, sir." He nodded in acknowledgement and quickly set about assembling a breakfast to go for Thomas. He knew that Martha's concern for her husband's health was well-founded, and he did his best to ensure that both Thomas and young Bruce were well-nourished and cared for. He swiftly packed a selection of breakfast items into a neat container, making sure it was a balanced meal that would provide the necessary energy for the day. He placed it in a bag, ready for Thomas to take with him. "Here's your breakfast, sir. Please take care and have a successful day at Wayne Enterprises," he said, handing the bag to Thomas. "Thank you, Alfred. I appreciate it," Thomas replied with a nod, taking the bag from him. He knew he could always rely on Alfred to look after the family, ensuring that even the smallest details were attended to. With a final nod, Thomas left the room, headed for the day's challenges. Alfred made his way to young Bruce's room, where he knew the boy would soon wake up. He knocked gently on the door and entered, finding Bruce sitting on the floor with a disassembled toy Batmobile he had built the other day. Bruce looked up, his eyes bright with curiosity, as Alfred entered the room. He had been engrossed in his tinkering, trying to figure out the intricacies of the miniature Batmobile. The butler's presence was a comforting constant in his life, someone he had grown to trust implicitly. "Good morning, Master Bruce," he greeted with a warm smile, his British accent adding a touch of sophistication to the morning. He approached Bruce and carefully examined the disassembled toy. "What seems to be the problem with our Batmobile today?" Bruce tilted his head, his expression thoughtful. "I think I need to upgrade the propulsion system. It's not as fast as I want it to be." Alfred chuckled softly, his eyes twinkling with amusement. Always aiming for perfection, I see." "Very well, how about we take a proper look at it after breakfast?" Bruce nodded eagerly, his enthusiasm undiminished by the technical challenge. Well, not that it's too challenging for him, but without access to proper tools and considering he is only 3 years old, yeah, it's kinda challenging for him. "That sounds like a plan. I've been thinking about some improvements." "Excellent," he said, guiding Bruce to the small table set for breakfast. He pulled out a chair for the young boy, who climbed up onto it with a sense of independence beyond his years. As he sat down, Alfred placed a plate of freshly made pancakes in front of him, topped with a dollop of whipped cream and a drizzle of maple syrup. Next to it was a colorful array of fruit slices, including strawberries, bananas, and blueberries. Bruce's eyes lit up at the sight of the breakfast spread. "Wow, this looks amazing. You're the best. Damn it. How long do I have to behave like a freaking kid with a genius mind? Why do I have to be reborn in a kid's body?" he wondered. Alfred couldn't help but smile at the child's enthusiasm. "I'm delighted to hear that. It's important for growing young minds to start the day with a hearty meal. Oh, by the way," Bruce turned toward the butler, "have you seen my sketchbook?" Meanwhile at Wayne Enterprises, Thomas Wayne rushed through the bustling halls of Wayne Enterprises, his mind preoccupied with the mysterious blueprint he had discovered in Bruce's sketchbook earlier that morning. The equations and symbols on the page had intrigued him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they held some significance. Entering the Research and Development office, he was greeted by the familiar sight of scientists and engineers engrossed in their work. Thomas was no stranger to the world of cutting-edge technology, having overseen countless projects in his role as the CEO of Wayne Enterprises. However, the contents of the blueprint were unlike anything he had encountered before. "Good morning, Mr. Wayne," greeted his assistant, Emily, a young and efficient woman who had been working closely with him for years. "Morning, Emily," he replied with a nod. He made his way to his office, his thoughts consumed by the enigmatic formulae. He needed to understand their purpose and origin. Once inside his office, he closed the door behind him, giving himself a moment of solitude to focus. He placed the blueprint on his desk and began to examine it more closely. The equations were complex, and the symbols seemed to defy conventional mathematical notation. It was clear that whoever had created this had a profound understanding of advanced physics and engineering principles. There were references to concepts that were far beyond the scope of current technology. "This isn't just a child's doodling," Thomas muttered to himself, his brows furrowing in concentration. "These equations, they hint at something extraordinary." He took out a notepad and began to jot down the elements he could decipher. Slowly but steadily, he started to piece together the puzzle, forming a rough understanding of the intended design. Meanwhile, Emily knocked gently on the door and entered, holding a tablet with a display of Wayne Enterprises' current projects. "Mr. Wayne, here are the updates on our ongoing research and development projects," she said, her voice professional and composed. He glanced up briefly, acknowledging her presence. "Thank you. Please leave them on the desk. I'll review them later." She placed the tablet on the desk and then noticed the blueprint that Thomas was studying. Her curiosity got the better of her, and she couldn't resist asking, "Is that something related to a new project, sir?" He paused for a moment, debating whether to share the mysterious blueprint with her. While he trusted Emily's competence and discretion, the nature of this discovery was highly unusual. "You think so?" He held the sketchbook before her. Crayon scribbles? She was taken by surprise seeing the messy scribbles of a kid. "Is that Bruce's drawing book?" He looked at Emily with a knowing smile as he watched her reaction to the seemingly chaotic scribbles in the sketchbook. It was a reaction he had expected, given that the blueprint was hidden within the pages of a child's drawing book. "Yes, it is Bruce's drawing book," Thomas replied, keeping his tone casual. He didn't want to reveal the true significance of the blueprint just yet. He's been quite imaginative lately, drawing all sorts of things. Emily's skepticism was evident as she continued to examine the colorful drawings of superheroes and fantastical creatures that filled the pages. She couldn't help but chuckle at the childlike innocence of it all. "He certainly has an active imagination," she commented, a hint of amusement in her voice. Thomas decided to maintain the facade of innocence as well, not wanting to divulge too much information. "Indeed, he does. Children can be quite creative. And thanks to that." He took a page out of the briefcase and handed it to her. "A car's design." She took the page. "Yes. All thanks to Bruce's scribbles, I was able to draw something new in a while. Send this car's design to Paul. I want to surprise Bruce on his next birthday," he said with a smile. The days turned into weeks, and young Bruce continued to display an astonishing level of intellect that was far beyond his years. He had been enrolled in a local kindergarten, and his experiences there were nothing short of extraordinary. In the small, colorful classroom filled with toys and giggles, Bruce stood out as a child prodigy. While the other children played with building blocks and finger paints, he was already reading books that would challenge the average adult mind. His teacher, Mrs. Johnson, was both amazed and slightly overwhelmed by the young boy's capabilities. One sunny morning, as the children gathered around a small table for a lesson, Mrs. Johnson presented a puzzle to the class. It was a simple jigsaw puzzle with oversized pieces featuring various animals. "All right, children," she said with a warm smile. "Let's see who can complete this puzzle first. It's a race." The children eagerly grabbed the pieces, their eyes sparkling with excitement. "Why? Just why do I have to endure this hellhole? What crime did I commit to be put in this kid's playroom?" Bruce screamed in his mind. His inner thoughts were a stark contrast to the innocence and enthusiasm that radiated from the other children in the classroom. While they joyfully assembled their jigsaw pieces, he sat with an air of resignation, his gaze fixed on the puzzle. Mrs. Johnson noticed his lack of participation and approached him with a gentle smile, unaware of the extraordinary mind that resided within the small boy. "Bruce, dear, aren't you going to join in the puzzle race?" He glanced up at her with a calm and mature expression, This puzzle is quite simple. It doesn't pose any challenge to me." The teacher blinked in surprise, not expecting such a response from a kindergartner. She had seen glimpses of Bruce's advanced intellect, but this was the first time he had openly dismissed a task as beneath him. "Really, Bruce?" she inquired, her curiosity piqued. "Well, why don't you give it a try anyway? Sometimes it's fun to do simple things with friends." He sighed softly, relenting to the idea. With a casual grace that belied his age, he picked up a puzzle piece and effortlessly fit it into its rightful place. The picture of a smiling giraffe quickly began to take shape under his nimble fingers. The other children watched in amazement as Bruce completed the puzzle with astonishing speed and precision. His eyes didn't dart around in confusion like the others. Instead, he seemed to have an innate sense of where each piece belonged. "I'm done," he announced, placing the final piece in its place. The giraffe smiled up at him from the completed puzzle. Mrs. Johnson was taken aback by the speed at which Bruce had finished. She couldn't help but marvel at his abilities. "Well, Bruce, it seems you're quite the puzzle master." "Yum. I did tell you this puzzle is quite simple," he replied with an expressionless face. Mrs. Johnson wanted to say something, but a kid apparently hit his head on a small plastic block and started crying. She rushed to him. "I know I am a genius. I am a freaking adult reborn in a kid's body and Tony Stark's brain." He wanted to scream his frustration to the heavens. He wanted to build a high-tech Batman suit with Iron Man's arc reactor and fulfill his dream to become Gotham's Dark Knight, or in his case, Iron Knight. But he could only curse the predicament he was put in now. Imagine an adult in a 3.5-year-old body sitting in a kindergarten among little kids yelling, crying, peeing and pooping, playing with dirt, mud, and a mountain of sticky stuff. When his situation had first begun to dawn on him, Bruce realized how screwed up his situation was, and he could not contain his immense sadness. He wanted to blame his parents for admitting him to this kindergarten 1.5 years early, which could be, as the saying goes, a prison where you can run but cannot escape from. He wanted to eat spicy noodles, but his body was craving milk, and his kid tongue was too delicate and weak to handle anything but bland and sweet stuff. He wanted to savor a glass of wine and a slice of pizza, yet all he was getting was baby food, and it made him feel like dying every single time his mouth chewed on baby food. He wanted to enjoy some nightlife, and yet the only option that was available to him now was diapers. Well, he sometimes loses control of his bladder due to his brain telling his 3.5-year-old kid's body what and how to do. All of these grievances slowly piled up within his mind, and he wanted to vent his frustration. He can't even watch a freaking porn, well, except perhaps a kid show like SpongeBob. No smartphone, no computer or laptop, no nothing. He has only some toys, a TV with a parental lock, although he can hack at any time, some easy-to-understand children's books, and diapers. Well, the internet and electronic books were pretty good options. But still, he yearns to read the comics and novels about superheroes that he enjoyed in his previous life and watch the movies in 4K high-quality full screen. And above all these, there's a gigantic problem that he just can't solve. He wanted to train his body. Although his brain was technically an adult, his body was still weak and undeveloped. Damn it! When will I grow up? Bruce yelled inwardly in frustration. The day passed without anything interesting or unusual happening. Later, as night fell, Bruce found himself curled up in his bed, looking at the dark sky. "It's gonna rain today," he muttered as he gazed out the window. His eyes went toward his glowing toy watch. 2 a.m. The peaceful silence was disturbed by the patter of the heavy rain, as though the skies were crying tears of grief and pain. The room grew darker, and the raindrops grew in intensity and size until the entire window was blocked by a curtain of water. A flash of lightning briefly illuminated the room, and Bruce saw his tiny body on the small bed. He slowly climbed down his small bed and silently walked toward the door. Slowly opening it, he glanced outside to check the hallways. Seeing that no one else was up at the time, he closed the door and locked it from inside. He lighted a candle and placed it on the floor since the electricity seemed to be off and the generator didn't seem to be working. Placing the candle, he opened his closet and wore the raincoat over his clothes to avoid getting wet. Then he took a torchlight, slowly opened the window, and jumped outside. Just as his feet landed on the muddy ground, the rain was already starting to seep through the gap between the raincoat and the hood on his head. Turning the torch on, he began to make his way through the garden, the raindrops pelting against his face like tiny bullets, stinging him. Finally, he managed to reach his destination, a small wooden house he and Alfred built last week. He opened the door and went inside. Closing the door, He slowly took off his raincoat. The darkness inside the cabin was perforated by the dim glow of the torchlight. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he walked toward the pile of toys and pushed them aside. Lying beneath the pile was nothing. Bruce took his plastic mud scraper from the heap of the toys, scraping the surface of the floor with it, and after doing that a few times, it revealed a small wooden plank, hidden under the mud. Pushing it aside, he took out a large plastic box. Bruce sat cross-legged and placed the plastic box in front of him. Opening the box, it revealed a secret stash of equipment that he had been picking up from here and there. Well, maybe he has taken a screw or two from the household tools, wires, and some electronic appliances, like lamps. And maybe he accidentally came across a stash of metal tools when he visited his father's hospital lab. Or that time-to-time faked cries and his demand to visit the Wayne Enterprises development sector, just a moment before the Sector A&F Research Department employees were called to take lunch. He might have taken away some things, too many things. They didn't notice him slipping things away though. It's not called stealing when it's all going to be used for greater things. Anyway, I'm a child, no need to question me. Bruce thought with a smirk, proud of himself for avoiding the CCTVs and the people there. Now I have all the equipment I need to make a wristwatch gun and a microbomb, he mumbled excitedly. He can now achieve 2 goals from his goal list. These will help him kill the guy who is going to shoot his parents in the upcoming years. The small wooden cabin was barely large enough to fit a single person comfortably. Its dimly lit interior was illuminated only by the faint glow of the torchlight Bruce held in his hands. The rain outside continued to drum against the roof and windows, creating a soothing backdrop for the clandestine activity taking place within. He sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by a small arsenal of tools and materials he had clandestinely collected over time. The plastic box lay open before him, revealing an array of wires, circuits, and tiny components. His fingers moved with practiced precision as he carefully selected the necessary components. Each piece had been meticulously chosen for its specific purpose. It was a delicate process, akin to solving an intricate puzzle. The complexity of his task seemed at odds with the simple surroundings, but Bruce was undeterred. He started with the main body of the wristwatch gun. Carefully disassembling an old wristwatch he had acquired, he salvaged the casing and selected a suitable miniaturized spring mechanism from within. This mechanism would serve as the basis for triggering the gun's mechanism. Next, he carefully stripped down a small but powerful firecracker, extracting its explosive core. He handled it gingerly, acutely aware of the risks involved. This would be the source of propulsion for the projectile, a compact yet potent force. Bruce delicately connected the spring mechanism to the explosive core, ensuring that it would be set off with precision timing. He then carefully began to integrate a tiny tube, directing the explosive force towards the desired trajectory. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he worked in the confined space, the pressure of his task palpable. The rain is still falling hard. The miniature gun began to take shape, resembling a compact wristwatch with subtle modifications. He carefully concealed the explosive core within the casing, making sure it was securely nestled within its confines. The wiring and triggering mechanism were carefully hidden, leaving no visible signs of the deadly potential the device held. Finally, he secured the strap of the wristwatch, ensuring a snug fit around the wearer's wrist. It was a disguise perfected through meticulous craftsmanship, a deadly weapon hidden in plain sight. All right, the first prototype is complete. Time to test out. He strapped the watch on his wrist and took a small metal ball that he might have borrowed from the R&D from Wayne Enterprise when no one was looking. He carefully loaded the small metal ball into the modified wristwatch gun. His heart raced with a mixture of excitement and trepidation as he prepared to test his creation. The rain outside continued its relentless rhythm, seemingly oblivious to the significant moment within the small cabin. With the metal ball securely in place, he aimed the wristwatch gun at the wooden floor. His finger hovered over the concealed trigger mechanism. He took a deep breath and steadied his hand. 3, 2, 1. He pressed the hidden trigger. There was a muffled click, followed by a sudden burst of force that sent the metal ball hurtling toward the floor. The tiny projectile struck the muddy surface with remarkable speed. Hot, hot, hot. He quickly pulled the strap and threw the watch on the floor. Heat-based propulsion. Effective, but too hot. Phew. He blew air on his tiny wrist. Bruce's mind raced as he contemplated how to mitigate the issue of excessive heat generated by the wristwatch gun's propulsion system. He carefully examined the components of the modified wristwatch, focusing on the explosive core and the tubing that directed the explosive force. It was clear to him that the heat was a result of the rapid combustion of the explosive material. To solve this problem, he needed to find a way to disperse the heat more efficiently. His eyes fell on a small aluminum plate he had salvaged from an old laptop's casing. It was lightweight and had excellent heat-conducting properties. Bruce had an idea. He tried to cut it, but... shit. Alfred locked the cutter in the garden warehouse. Maybe I will trick him into cutting it for me. An upgrade for Batmobile as an excuse sounds good enough, he sighed, realizing that he would need to come up with a plan to obtain the cutter from the garden warehouse. Convincing Alfred to help him with a Batmobile upgrade sounded like a reasonable excuse, but he needed to be careful not to raise any suspicions. Bruce knew that he couldn't afford to rush this delicate operation. He needed to bide his time and wait for the right moment to approach Alfred with his request. In the meantime, he carefully concealed the wristwatch gun and the rest of the items in the secret compartment beneath the wooden plank. He reassembled the pile of toys to conceal any evidence of his activities and put everything back in its original place. His mind was already busy formulating a plan to approach Alfred and secure the necessary tools for the modifications. He knew that timing and presentation would be crucial in gaining Alfred's cooperation without arousing suspicion. Bruce turned off the torchlight, making sure to leave no trace of his nocturnal venture. He opened the cabin door slowly, checking once again if anyone was around. The rain had subsided, leaving a calm, damp atmosphere outside. Stepping out into the cool, damp night, he made his way back to Wayne Manor, the darkness concealing his thoughts and intentions. 2 days later, it was a sunny morning, and Bruce had taken his usual seat at the kitchen table for breakfast, his thoughts consumed by the impending conversation with Alfred. It's been a while since he woke up and sat for breakfast at the table. The butler had been busy with his duties around the house, and this was Bruce's opportunity to present his request. "Good morning, Alfred," he greeted cheerfully, putting on his most innocent and endearing expression as he munched on his cereal. "Good morning, Master Bruce," Alfred replied, setting a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of the young boy. "I trust you slept well?" He nodded, taking a sip of his milk. "Yes, I had a good night's sleep." "Very good to hear," Alfred said with a warm smile, appreciating the simplicity of a child's world. "Is there anything special you'd like to do today?" Bruce paused for a moment, feigning a contemplative expression. "Actually, I was thinking. I want to upgrade my Batmobile." Alfred raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. "Upgrade your Batmobile, Master Bruce?" "Yes," he replied. "I thought we could make it more aerodynamic, maybe add some extra thrusters for speed. Oh, and definitely improve the communication system. It'll be like a real superhero car." Alfred couldn't help but be impressed by Bruce's creativity. He decided to encourage this imagination, knowing it was a healthy outlet for a growing mind. "A splendid idea indeed, Master Bruce. We'll need some tools for this project. Let me fetch the toolkit from the garden warehouse while you finish your breakfast." Bruce's heart skipped a beat at Alfred's willingness to help. This was his chance to obtain the necessary tools for his wristwatch gun modifications. He tried to contain his excitement and maintain a casual demeanor. "Thank you, Alfred." Alfred smiled warmly, glad to see Bruce so engaged and enthusiastic about a project. "Of course, Master Bruce. Let's make this Batmobile the best it can be." 5 years had passed since that rainy night in the small wooden cabin, where a 3.5-year-old Bruce had crafted his first wristwatch gun. Now, at the age of 8, Bruce Wayne sat in a classroom, surrounded by classmates whose minds were far simpler and less voracious than his own. The years had been both a blessing and a curse for Bruce. On one hand, he had used his intellect to excel in academics, absorbing knowledge at an astonishing rate. On the other hand, he found himself stifled in the confines of a conventional education system. The subjects were too easy, too slow for his advanced understanding. He wanted to focus on crafting various equipment and bizarre items, but his parents said education and degrees were 2 things he must possess if he wanted to live his dream life, and there was no shortcut. His father won't allow him to cut grades and move up to higher grades. "You must have patience, Bruce. I know you are a genius, but if you don't have patience, you won't succeed in your life." Thomas's words echoed in his ears as he polished his wristwatch. The wristwatch gun had undergone numerous modifications and refinements, each designed to make it more efficient and less conspicuous. As he sat in the classroom, his attention divided between the teacher's monotonous lecture and his own thoughts. Bruce couldn't help but feel a sense of restlessness. The school year had just begun, and he was already well ahead of the curriculum. "Bruce." The teacher's voice rang out, frustration evident as she tried to get his attention. Bruce snapped back to reality, his gaze shifting from the intricate design on his wristwatch to the teacher at the front of the classroom. His classmates turned to look at him, some with curiosity, others with amusement. "Yes, Miss Davis," he replied, his tone polite but distant. Miss Davis sighed, clearly exasperated by his lack of participation. "Bruce, you need to pay attention in class. You can't just drift off like that." Mrs. Davis, the maths teacher, looked at Bruce with a mix of concern and frustration. "You know that one teacher in every school who's kind of annoying and just bad at her job? Yeah, that's this lady." She was dressed in her usual pantsuit, her dark hair pulled into a tight bun and her expression pinched. Her voice was high-pitched, grating on Bruce's nerves, and she reminded him of the annoying and demanding aunts who make people uncomfortable and yet never gets it. She was definitely someone who wouldn't do anything she was ordered to do. She would whine and make excuses when caught but would never accept any blame. 36. Bruce replied with an absent tone. His face still held the same pleasant yet detached smile. Miss Davis let out an indignant huff, crossing her arms over her chest. "Bruce, you are not listening to me." "Am I?" He raised a brow in question. His classmates stifled their chuckles at the back, causing his brows to frown slightly. It had not been the first time they had done such a thing, but his question had gotten Miss Davis a tad nervous. He pointed at the blackboard, the second-grade mathematical formula painted on the surface, and let out a light sigh as his classmates failed to stifle their chuckles again. 36. Miss Davis. "I'm right." "Okay," her response stammered as she attempted to find her composure. "Sit down." She brushed back a loose lock of hair before focusing her attention to the students in the front rows. "But pay attention from now on, Bruce." Her voice shook, a visible tremble going through her figure. I know some might say it's disrespectful, but could you elaborate on what you mean by pay attention?" Was the answer wrong? He opened his book and flipped to the back page where all the answers were printed. Finding his question at the top of the page, "Nah, it's the right answer. So, what's the problem? Or do you have a problem with me?" He tapped his finger, his eyebrows rose upwards. His actions only worsened Miss Davis's stance, and soon enough she ran away to get the headmaster, trying to play the victim as usual. "Ha ha ha. Nice job, Bruce." One of his classmates, John, came from behind him and gave him a congratulatory pat on the back. His voice was laced with amusement. "She is so annoying and boring. I almost fell asleep a few times this class, ha." He turned back, and his gaze landed upon a somewhat pudgy boy in glasses, whose features were arranged in an innocent grin. Though John had always been soft-spoken and had trouble standing out in class, Bruce still respected him a little, considering he was the second-ranking student in the entire grade. Now she will cry a river to the headmaster, and like always she will be transferred to another class by next week, and will complain that this class is against her, the short-haired, sweet girl named Lorraine added, with her cute round face still filled with an amused smirk. Bruce smirked, shaking his head in amusement. At least today isn't as boring as he thought. Just then, another classmate, Thomas, a quiet and reserved boy, joined in. "The question is, how will you solve her this time, Bruce?" he wondered. Bruce grinned. "Open the answer page." His classmates surrounding him looked at the book pages which held the solutions in pure surprise. A printing mistake, both the question and the answer. "I just took a peek at Jane's book when she flipped it over and gave the answer. She should have checked the back and should have understood her error. It's a second-grade question. She is the teacher. Don't teachers have some duties? God. It's time for her to take another exam. She must have bribed her way in with the new school director, huh? Here comes trouble," Thomas announced in a soft voice, bringing his attention back. The other students shuffled back to their seats, while Bruce was not in the slightest mood. He has always believed that he will have to face those he dislikes sooner or later, so better get them out of the way as early as possible. It didn't take long before the new director came in, followed by the disgruntled teacher. Director Fleming entered the classroom and stared at the class of rambunctious kids for a few long seconds, as if sizing them up. "What is the meaning of this, Mr. Wayne? And please explain to us why Miss Davis left in tears and is so emotional in my office, after assuring her that no child in my school will face any problem." His words sounded ominous. He was an older man of middle age, wearing a deep black suit and sporting an iron-gray mustache and hair, who stood straight as if waiting for something, and for his posture to break or relax, as Bruce had observed. To his surprise, it seemed like his body posture was a fixed thing, and even the anger he displayed didn't stop the rigid pose. His mouth looked dry, and his voice was like that of the famous cartoonish principal who had to fire kids for silly reasons. Should have brought an umbrella today. The words rang in Bruce's mind as he noticed the cloudy sky through the window while his hand, without him even thinking, tapped on his wrist, playing with the lever of the watch. "Sir, you don't need to be worried. The problem has been solved, sir. You just need to see the textbook." He smiled and spoke gently, looking quite an innocent and harmless kid as usual. His classmates snickered in a soft tone as Bruce didn't beat around the bush, instead decided to show the problems to the old director. "Do you mean to imply that my teacher is incompetent and foolish to have a problem that an 8-year-old can fix?" The director's jaw was firm and his eyes held a cold stare. Bruce almost laughed as he heard his next words. "I expect more from my best students, Bruce. I want you to apologize to Miss Davis now. Does the good cop, bad cop strategy work at 8 years? He is not bad at trying though. Old Coot must have sagged her, huh? Interesting." His face still maintained the fake innocence of an 8-year-old having another dark mole of his personality, naivety. "Director Fleming," his voice carried slight sadness in his words. "For what? For pointing out the obvious fact? But don't worry about that. We will just submit a petition to the Education Council that her qualification as a teacher is in serious question if her test scores are that horrible." He sighed, as if sad and exhausted. What a pity. Such a pitiful and sad thing. His words struck a nerve in the already embarrassed and flushed director, whose eye started to twitch. Bruce smirked slightly at the twitching eye and relaxed posture as the director restrained the anger. "Fine, I will take a look." Self-study today. His gaze fell upon Miss Davis, and he signaled her to come forward and provide him the explanation. She walked over obediently and with her head bent forward, giving the impression of a dog begging for forgiveness, as she passed the solution book in his hands. Director Fleming and his emotional companion proceeded to exit the class while her hands shaking due to nervousness and a visible hint of anger were on her face. Her face was red, a sure sign that she had been on the verge of tears, and her cheeks were wet, though Bruce was pretty sure the old man had already done a full course in 3 to 4 minutes with her. Time to slip out and take a look around the city. Bruce packed his bag and slipped out of the school's back gate during the lunch break since he got nothing to study there anymore. Sneaking out of school wasn't a big deal to Bruce. Well, his parents might be angry with him, but his mom does care more, and a good old-fashioned hug along with the line, "Don't go alone next time," should do. Bruce couldn't help but let a wry smile float across his face. His parents have always trusted him way too much, and he had done nothing that would hurt their trust or disappoint them. However, they often didn't recognize the way they should approach him to make him less rebellious was different, in the same manner as one would raise a regular child and one who is a genius. He had been asked and trained as someone with great promise as a great successor, but his parents treated him like a normal boy all this while, without fully utilizing the talents God blessed him with. As he was strolling near the slum area on the Gotham Road, a police car stopped beside him. "Bruce, what are you doing here? Don't tell me that you slipped out of the school again." A middle-aged male face peered out the driver's window, shock etched clearly on the face. It was Gordon's face. Lieutenant Jim Gordon of the GCPD HAA. "There goes my fun time," he grumbled. Bruce sighed, realizing he couldn't avoid Lieutenant Jim Gordon's inquisitive gaze. He had to come up with a plausible excuse to explain his presence near the slum area. Playing the innocent schoolboy wouldn't cut it. "Hey, Lieutenant Gordon," Bruce greeted with a friendly smile, doing his best to appear casual. I was just taking a walk. Needed some fresh air, you know." Gordon raised an eyebrow, his expression a mix of skepticism and concern. He was used to dealing with all sorts of situations in Gotham, and a young boy wandering near the slums piqued his curiosity. "Fresh air, huh?" Gordon replied, leaning slightly out of the car window. "In this part of town?" He looked at his wristwatch. "And in the middle of school time? You are cutting classes again, I see." "No. Not classes." Bruce hurriedly denied it and explained further, "Self-study classes." "Yeah right, whatever, young man. I can't let you wander around alone." He unlocked the back door. "Get in. I will call your dad to pick you up." Bruce let out a defeated sigh and begrudgingly got inside the car, the heavy weight of disappointment bearing down on him. The car sped off, the wind from the open windows fluttering through his hair. Bruce gazed out the window and watched the scenery blur past him. He glanced up and his gaze fell upon Lieutenant Gordon's expression. The old cop looked tense. There was no hint of the relaxed demeanor that Bruce was used to seeing on him, only a sense of caution and wariness. He made a split-second decision to ask Gordon about the case. Do you have a case to attend right now, Lieutenant? Bruce interrupted, the last bit of his curiosity rearing its head, and the fact that he wanted to talk a bit to Gordon. Something like that. My team got a call about a group of street gangsters smuggling some people. Bad case of smuggling, something like kidnapping. I was on the way to interrogate the Vince Clothing's factory manager. You ever heard of this company? Gordon explained. He nodded his head with a sigh. Just another day in Gotham. Of course, Vince Clothing Company's main warehouse is at 1909 Ford Avenue, South Gotham. Went there a couple of times with Alfred. What do you think of the manager? Gordon asked as he looked at the 8-year-old's face in his rear mirror. The atmosphere was somehow better than in his classroom as he decided to speak a bit freely. If you are asking for my personal opinion, then, all I can say is that guy is one hell of a negotiator. His smooth tongue can fool anyone. Good at doing stuff with paperworks and hides everything in a layer of those. You can only find out if you heat the bottom part, he smirked. Though it seems like you got enough reason to interrogate him. Really? How did you figure out he hides something behind all those papers? Gordon replied in an impressed tone. Lemons. There were bags of lemons in the trash bin outside his shop, he replied as he polished the wristwatch. Now, why would a clothing shop need so many lemons? Lemons. Gordon frowned as he was now curious and surprised at Bruce's response. Lemon. Invisible ink? Rings a bell. Yep. Classic trick for hiding sensitive information. He smirked again as if he knew every inch about those tricks. I tried it once. Works. Almost flawless. Who taught you that? Gordon was flabbergasted by Bruce's response. He thought that it was normal knowledge. How the hell is a kid this young, a kid, knows how to do it? He heard about Bruce's intelligence from Thomas, but to experience it in such a direct and crisp way. Bruce saw Gordon's shocked face and found himself mentally fist-pumping himself. And here I thought it would be boring. I learned something new, his ego purred, obviously from the books. Where else would I learn it? The rest of the ride was in silence. Gordon stopped his car near the clothing store. Stay here, and don't even think of running away. He ordered Bruce before disappearing inside the shop. Don't worry, Lieutenant, I wouldn't dream of it. Bruce's response was heard as Gordon was already inside. He watched from the window as Gordon questioned a middle-aged man dressed in a tan suit, the man's face red with anger and bluster. Although he couldn't hear anything from outside, he noticed as the manager handed Gordon a stack of paper and an expensive trench coat. He took the papers and the coat with a sharp nod and walked back towards the car. Ah, to think someone like Gordon takes a bribe in broad daylight like this. Bruce shook his head in disgust. He always knew about this, but not in such an open spot. At least he seems like a good person. Oh well, that trench coat is expensive for a police officer. Bruce glanced over at the shabby watch adorning his wrist and frowned as it registered 2:30. His stomach grumbled with hunger. Gordon entered the car and looked back at him. You have a nice brain there, kid. I will not tell your father about this, but try not to wander alone in a place like this. You might end up hurt. Yes, sir. Thank you for the compliments, Bruce replied, ignoring the last part. So, he is telling me to keep my mouth shut, and in return, he will keep his mouth shut. Nice. As the car sped through the streets, Bruce opened his lunchbox and began eating the sandwiches inside. The fresh taste of bread filled his mouth. He even offered the officer a sandwich, which Gordon gratefully accepted. Good sandwiches. Is it Alfred who made it for you? Gordon asked as he finished his food. Yes. You are lucky to have him. Most kids would kill to have such a great butler, Gordon laughed. I know I would. He only nodded. Soon, Gordon drove to the Wayne Manor and dropped him off near the gate. Don't stroll around the city, Bruce. Things aren't the best they've been. I will keep that in mind, he responded politely. You're a good kid. Stay this way. Gordon spoke one last time as the car disappeared into the road. The evening rolled in, and the Wayne family had planned to go out for a movie. It was a rare occasion when the entire family could enjoy some quality time together, and they were all looking forward to it. Bruce couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as the evening approached. He had been preparing for this night for 8 long years. It was the night when Joe Chill would kill his parents. The night that would change his life forever. He had spent countless hours honing his skills, both mentally and physically, in preparation for this moment. He double-checked his wristwatch gun, took his small makeshift explosive grenade in his pocket, and even wore the special vest he made to avoid unnecessary complications. Bruce, you ready? Thomas entered the room. His father stood before him, unaware of the danger that loomed. He couldn't bear the thought of losing his parents. He wants to eliminate all unknown variables as much as possible. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Bruce quickly closed the door. "What's wrong?" Thomas frowned, noticing that Bruce had a look of fear on his face. "I snuck out of school today. Again." "Just let me finish." Bruce sat on the bed. "I overheard something about someone putting a hit on you tonight. Joe Chill is the gun. That scumbag." "And where did you hear about this?" He smiled at the prospect. "This was the night. Near the slums. Lieutenant Gordon caught me. I know it seems unbelievable, but I can't shake off this bad feeling. I can't be 100% sure, but..." Thomas frowned. He was planning to run for the city council this year. A thought stuck in his mind. Could this be his rivals or business enemies making such threats? Could this be one of Wayne's companies doing this? "Are you 100% sure it was the name Joe Chill? And you said Joe is the gun." "Bruce. Who is the trigger?" "Rupert Thorne. Isn't he also running for the city council?" Bruce bit his lips in anxiety, and his forehead scrunched up as he recalled the event. Thorne was in a hidden deal with Falcone. Why is a piece of fish acting all hi-hat? Falcone could still strike even after losing his business. Rupert is doing all that in broad daylight. Thomas pondered about the information. He recalled the hidden deals between Rupert and Carmine and pondered. Falcone is cunning to strike out like that. Could this be Carmine's plan to lure me out? Or Rupert has gained more power than I imagined? Bruce doesn't lie. Should I put my leg in the trap and capture the mouse if it truly exists? Or should I just avoid it and have the GCPD investigate it thoroughly? Thomas stood by the bedroom door and thought about the bad news that kept popping up every day. "Let's catch the mouse," Bruce said as he pulled out a bag from under his bed. "If we lose this chance, we won't know when they will strike again." He took out another wristwatch and a small grenade, non-lethal gun and sleeping gas. "Take them." "How? Did you?" "Don't ask. Just make sure to protect yourself and Mom. As I said, you two must wear bulletproof jackets. And we will go to the movies as planned. Have Mr. Gordon and his team on standby near the alley around the theater. We will act as the bait," Bruce replied as he stood near the window and sighed. "Just don't die and protect your heads, yeah." The Wayne family arrived at the theater, the anticipation of a night of entertainment filling the air. Bruce couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness as he watched his parents chatting and laughing. This was the night he had been preparing for, the night Joe Chill would make his move. As they entered the theater, he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. He knew that lurking in the shadows, Joe Chill was waiting for the right moment to strike. Inside the theater, the Wayne family settled into their seats, and the lights dimmed as the movie began. Bruce tried to focus on the film, but his senses were on high alert. He couldn't afford to let his guard down, not tonight. His parents were wearing the bulletproof vest and were behaving normally to prevent any suspicions. As the movie played on the big screen, his attention drifted between the film and the theater's exit. He knew that the alley behind the theater was where the attack would happen. Suddenly, he heard the sound of voices nearby. He peered into the darkness and saw a group of men quietly making their way towards the exit. He couldn't make out their features, but something told him they were up to no good. Thomas and Martha gave the movie their full attention, while Bruce had no choice but to sit there feeling nervous. He clenched his fists, trying not to let his anxiety get the better of him. He knew that the next few minutes would determine the outcome of the night. Even though he is a reincarnation with 2 life experiences behind him, it is hard to overcome one's emotions. A slight mistake could cost him everything. Soon, the movie was over and the Waynes got up from their seats, following the flow of people exiting the theater. As they reached the exit, Bruce felt a sense of dread come over him. Something felt off. He wasn't sure what it was, but something about the atmosphere felt wrong. A feeling deep in his gut told him that something was about to happen. They continued to walk. Thoman's right hand was in his coat, grabbing the Colt M1902 in his pocket. In his left, Thomas held Martha's wrist. While Bruce was walking beside his mother, clenching his left fist, ready to shoot his wristwatch gun, his right hand was in his pocket, holding the small stun grenade. They were now walking past the empty alley. Just when they were halfway in, they noticed a man walking toward them. He is wearing a beanie cap and a trench coat with his hands hidden in his pockets. Even in the dim light, one could notice his calmness in the situation. The man's presence was a stark contrast to the palpable tension in the air. As he walked closer, he revealed a handgun from his coat. Bruce had seen the gun plenty of times when practicing the proper stance for shooting and recognized it. Joe Chill, Bruce instantly knew. He thought about killing the man in one shot. But he needs him alive to get to the main trigger. Only a few meters. He was completely in his scope. Just a pull of a trigger and the paralysis round would come out. Joe Chill raised his gun. "Nothing personal, Mr. Wayne, just business," he announced with an expressionless tone. Click. Bruce pointed his fist and pressed the trigger mechanism. The metallic projectile raced forward, slamming into the shooter's shoulder and burying itself deep into his skin. Joe never saw it coming, and the force of the impact caused him to stumble backward, dropping the gun in the process. Before he could recover, Thomas rushed in, kicking the gun away, and pressed his gun on his forehead. "Stay on the ground, Chill," he shouted with cold eyes, his finger curling on the trigger. "Damn you, Wayne." Chill cursed as he looked up at the older Wayne. "You think you won?" "Huh." He smirked. "Pretty much, yeah," Thomas replied as he saw Gordon and his team rushing into the alley. Bang. The sound of a gunshot echoed in the alley. It came from behind, soon followed by 2 more gunshots. Shit. Bruce felt a warm liquid on his neck as blood oozed out of the bullet wound on his neck. He felt as if a truck hit him from behind as the bullet struck his bulletproof vest, stunning his body and breaking his ribs. He grabbed his neck to stop the bleeding. The pain was almost unbearable. His vision began to blur, but he fought through it, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He took his right hand out of his pocket and threw the stun grenade behind him before falling on the concrete road. He heard a couple of more gunshots after the stun grenade's explosion. Probably from Gordon and the other officers, or maybe his father shot the attackers. "At least, I didn't fail." Bruce blacked out, unable to stay conscious any longer. 10 years later, Martha entered Bruce's room with a heavy heart. It had been 10 long years since that fateful night when they had narrowly escaped an attempt on their lives. Bruce had been in a coma ever since, his life hanging in the balance. The room was bathed in soft, warm light, casting a gentle glow on the still figure lying in the bed. Bruce's once boyish face had matured into that of a young man, but his expression remained frozen in time. His body had grown, but he showed no signs of waking from his deep slumber. Martha sat down beside her son and took his hand in her own. She had spent countless hours by his bedside, praying for his recovery. She knew that the odds were stacked against them, but she couldn't give up hope. "Bruce," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "It's been so long, my dear. I miss you so much. I miss your smile, your laughter, your presence. I just want you to wake up." Tears streamed down her face as she spoke, her heart aching with every word. She gently stroked Bruce's cheek, hoping to elicit some kind of response. But nothing happened. The room remained silent, save for the steady beeping of the machines monitoring Bruce's vital signs. Martha buried her face in Bruce's chest, sobbing uncontrollably. "Please, Bruce. Come back to me," she pleaded, clutching onto her son tightly. Outside the room, Thomas stood silently, his back on the door. He could hear Martha's anguished cries, and it broke his heart. He wanted nothing more than to comfort his wife, but he knew that only Bruce could bring her peace. "Come back to us, son." He started to walk toward his study, leaving Martha alone with her grief. Alfred was waiting for him outside the study room. Seeing his master's forlorn expression, he wanted to say something, but he couldn't find the words. Instead, Alfred silently followed Thomas inside. "I miss you, Master Bruce. Please come back soon," he thought as he closed the study door. Back in Bruce's room, Martha lifted her head from his chest, her tear-stained cheeks glistening in the soft light. She gazed lovingly at her son's serene face, committing every detail to memory. "I love you, Bruce. Always remember that." She gently kissed Bruce's forehead before standing up to leave. Bruce's mind. Bruce opened his eyes, finding himself surrounded by complete darkness. He tried to move, but his body refused to respond. Panic gripped his heart as he realized he was trapped. Suddenly, a familiar voice broke through the silence. "Bruce." He turned his head toward the source of the voice. A faint light appeared in the distance, illuminating the figure of Martha Wayne. She smiled warmly at her son, her eyes filled with love and concern. He tried to speak, but no words came out. Martha seemed to understand, however, and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Her touch felt warm and comforting, chasing away the darkness that surrounded them. "It's time to wake up, Bruce. We're all waiting for you," she said softly. "Mom." He tried to reach out to her, but she disappeared into the darkness, leaving Bruce alone once again. A flash of light pierced through the darkness, temporarily blinding Bruce. When his vision finally adjusted, he found himself staring at a familiar figure. "Pepper," he mumbled under his breath. "Did I get back to my previous world?" He tried to move, but his body refused to respond. Pepper was sitting on the sofa in the living room, flipping through the photo album. A sad smile appeared on her face as she looked at the pictures, reminiscing about happier times. Bruce tried to call out to her, but his voice failed him. Pepper didn't seem to notice, however, and continued to flip through the album. He could see tears welling up in her eyes as she relived their memories together. "Pepper, I'm here. Can't you see me?" He desperately tried to communicate, but it was futile. "It's me, Tony." Bruce struggled to regain control of his body, but it was like his consciousness was trapped within a prison of flesh and bone. He watched helplessly as Pepper closed the album and stood up, wiping away her tears. He felt as if there was an invisible wall before him, separating him from Pepper. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't break through. Bruce wanted nothing more than to hold her in his arms, to comfort her, but he was powerless to do so. He remembered living a life as Tony Stark when he first reincarnated, married to Pepper Potts. Yet, why was he seeing this scene now? Pepper walked out of the living room, leaving him alone once again. He called out to her, but she didn't respond. "Break. Bastard. Which godly bastard is responsible for this?" Bruce roared internally, frustrated at his inability to reach Pepper. Suddenly, the wall before him cracked, revealing a ray of light. He continued to punch and kick at the wall, determined to break free from his prison. With each blow, the cracks grew larger, until finally, the wall shattered into pieces, engulfing Bruce in a bright light. "Am I back?" Author's note: he got a backlash of preventing a canon event. In the blinding light, Bruce felt a sensation of weightlessness. It was like floating through an endless void. He was devoid of his body and senses, yet a conscious awareness persisted. "Am I dead?" he wondered. As his vision adjusted, he found himself standing in the familiar confines of Stark Tower. But this was different. He wasn't physically present. He was a mere observer, a formless consciousness. Bruce's formless consciousness attempted to move, to escape the confines of Stark Tower, but an invisible force seemed to pull him back with an otherworldly grip. It was as if some supernatural presence within the tower refused to let him go. Frustration welled up inside him as he struggled against this unseen restraint. He couldn't understand why he was trapped in this spectral state, unable to interact with the physical world. Desperate to break free, he focused his thoughts on the idea of leaving the tower, of returning to the world of the living. He willed himself to move, to transcend this strange limbo that held him captive. But no matter how hard he tried, the force anchoring him within Stark Tower remained unyielding. It was as though his very essence was intertwined with the building, preventing him from escaping. His consciousness began to feel a sense of isolation and loneliness, trapped in this spectral state with no means of communication or interaction. He yearned to reunite with the world he knew, with the people he cared about. Damn this soul mumbo-jumbo. He flew down inside the underground secret chamber he had built when he was alive in this world as Tony Stark, where he kept all his most precious things. There has to be something here that can get me out of this ghost business. Maybe that ring Dr. Strange gave me? He mentioned something about soul and shit. I didn't pay much attention back then, but maybe. Just a small maybe. He floated around the secret chamber looking for said ring until he came across it. Inside a glass cube container, there it was, resting on a purple satin cushion. The ring glowed with a faint blue hue, pulsating with power. Bruce floated towards it, reaching out with his ghostly hand. Crackle! A spark of lightning arced between the ring and Bruce's spectral form, causing him to recoil in surprise and pain. "What the hell?" Bruce exclaimed, rubbing his tingling hand. The ring continued to glow with a mysterious power, taunting him from within its glass prison. "I can feel in this form? That shouldn't be possible. Should it?" He mused as he pondered his next course of action. Well, here goes nothing. Mustering his courage, he reached out once again towards the ring, grasping it firmly in his spectral hand. The lightning sparks once more, sending waves of pain coursing through his ethereal body. But Bruce held fast, refusing to let go. Suddenly, the ring began to vibrate in his hand, emitting a low hum that resonated throughout his being. Sparks of lightning danced along his spectral form, enveloping him in a cocoon of energy. He could feel his spectral form becoming more solid, more tangible. The dance of lightning continued to intensify, engulfing him in its crackling embrace. And then, as suddenly as it began, the ring ceased its vibrations, falling silent once more. Bruce stood there, clutching the ring tightly in his spectral hand. As Bruce held the ring, a soft melodic voice echoed in his mind, a voice filled with ancient wisdom and power. It spoke with a hint of amusement. "Impressive, mortal. You possess the will to grasp the lightning ring, a power that has eluded many." Bruce, still adjusting to his spectral form and the presence of the ring's consciousness, replied cautiously, "Who are you?" "I am the lightning ring of the Mandarin, one of the legendary Makluan rings." "And you?" "You are one interesting individual. A two-time reincarnator. Interesting. I wonder how your soul escaped their eyes. Not that it matters, since you are still in one piece." "Wait. The Mandarin rings? The 10 rings of Mandarin?" he asked with a raised brows. "Yes, you are correct, mortal," the voice replied, its tone carrying a sense of ancient knowledge. "The 10 rings of the Mandarin are powerful artifacts, each possessing a unique ability. I am one of them, the lightning ring." Bruce's mind raced with the possibilities. He had read about the Mandarin and his rings in the comics, but he never thought he would find himself in a situation like this, actually interacting with one of them. Besides, there is already someone in possession of the 10 rings. The Mandarin sought to harness the power of the rings for his own purposes, the voice continued. But he was but a mortal, limited in his understanding of their true potential. Now, the lightning ring has chosen you as its bearer, for reasons known only to itself. I know what you are and the end goal of the 10 rings. He threw the ring on the floor. You rings want to resurrect yourselves, and if I am not wrong, you have the power to influence others' mind and twist their thoughts to do your bidding. Am I wrong? The voice chuckled softly, a sound that seemed to echo within the confines of Bruce's mind. "You are not entirely incorrect, mortal," the voice acknowledged. "The rings possess a power to influence and manipulate, but their true purpose lies in the balance of the cosmos, a balance that has been disrupted." Bruce frowned, perplexed by the cryptic words. "Balance? What do you mean?" "The balance between the realms, the forces of creation and destruction, has been disturbed," the voice explained. "The rings were created to maintain this balance, but over the centuries, that purpose has been forgotten or corrupted by those who sought power. Once upon a time, we used to be the strongest cosmic warriors, but even we failed to stop them, and look at us now, sealed inside this tiny thing in a phantasmal state." "I know that, but here is the thing. From which reality or timeline do you belong to?" he asked, "because as far as I know, there is already a guy with the possession of the 10 rings. He wears them like 10 bracelets. Which means you are from an alternate reality." He knew that Shang-Chi had the 10 rings. If so, then this ring must have come from another reality. Another timeline. Another Earth. The voice within the ring remained silent for a moment, as if considering Bruce's words. Then it responded, "You are astute, mortal. I am indeed from another reality, a different Earth where the balance was maintained through the wielders of the rings. But mortals, no matter the reality, are the same. Greed. Greed destroyed them. That's all the information I can give you. I will help you get back to your world, and even help you transverse between realms." It continued, "In return, create a body for me. You build those robots, right? Build one for me to possess. Then you must find the other rings before they fall into the wrong hands and harness their power. Become the next Mandarin. And maybe, you will find the answer behind your reincarnation. Deal?" "Aren't you going to ask how I know about the rings?" he asked with a smirk. "Everyone has a secret, mortal. And secrets are meant to be kept," the voice replied mysteriously. "So, do we have a deal?" Bruce considered the rings offer carefully. If he can somehow master the 10 rings' powers, he will gain access to abilities beyond his wildest imagination. But such power comes with great consequences. Could he trust this mysterious entity? Only time will tell. He picked the ring off the floor. Deal. For now, his goal is to go back to the DC world. He needs to make sure his family is alright. And this lightning ring has the power of teleportation beyond the realms. The ring pulsated with a bright blue light, enveloping Bruce in its ethereal glow. He could feel his spectral form becoming more solid, more tangible. Power surged through his ethereal being, filling him with a sense of invincibility. Then, in a flash of bright light, he vanished from Stark Tower, transported to another realm, another Earth, another reality, another timeline. Wayne Manor. Bruce opened his eyes, but this time, it wasn't the darkness of a spectral realm that greeted him. Instead, he found himself surrounded by the soft, warm light of a familiar room. It took a moment for his senses to fully return, but as they did, he became acutely aware of his body. He could feel the sensation of lying on a comfortable bed, the softness of the sheets beneath him, and the warmth of sunlight streaming through the curtains. It was a sensation he hadn't experienced in what felt like an eternity. As he slowly sat up, he realized he was no longer trapped in the spectral form that had plagued him for so long. His body felt real and tangible, and he could move freely. Confusion and disorientation washed over him as he tried to make sense of his surroundings. It was like waking up from a deep and endless dream. "Where am I?" Bruce mumbled, his voice hoarse from disuse. The room around him began to come into focus. He recognized the familiar decor of Wayne Manor. It was his room, his home. But something felt different, as if he had been away for a long time. He tried to move his body, but it felt sluggish and heavy, as if he hadn't used it in ages. With great effort, he managed to swing his legs over the side of the bed and stand on shaky feet, but he immediately collapsed back onto the floor, exhausted from the simple act. Shit. How long was I out? He wondered as his eyes fell on the large mirror before his eyes. The last time he saw himself in the mirror was when he was only 8 years old. Now, he is 18. 10 years have passed since then. He stared at his reflection, taking in the changes that had occurred during his unconsciousness. His body was taller but somewhat thinner than before, his muscles less defined. His facial features were also different, more mature and refined. Yet, despite these differences, he could still recognize the boy he once was in his newfound appearance. He tried to get up, but he had no energy left in his body after using it for the first time after 10 years. Mom, Dad, Alfred, anyone. He tried to call for help, but his throat was parched and dry, making it difficult for him to speak. Damn. I thought it was just a few days tops. But here, years have passed, Bruce thought. He lay there on the floor helplessly as exhaustion slowly claimed him, dragging him back into the cold embrace of darkness. Bruce's consciousness slipped away once more as fatigue overtook him. It had been a long and bewildering journey, waking up from a coma after a decade of being trapped in a spectral state. He had so many questions, and the world around him had undoubtedly changed during his absence. In his unconscious state, he dreamt of fleeting memories from his past, of his family, and of the events leading up to his fateful coma. But the dreams were fragmented, like pieces of a puzzle that refused to fit together. Time passed slowly, and as he drifted in and out of consciousness, he could faintly hear voices around him. He couldn't make out the words, but the presence of others gave him a glimmer of hope that he was not alone. Gradually, his strength began to return, well, at least enough to open his eyes. Bruce's eyes slowly fluttered open, and as his vision cleared, he saw the familiar faces of his parents, Thomas and Martha Wayne, sitting by his bedside. Their expressions were a mix of relief and concern as they watched their son wake up after a decade-long coma. Mom, Dad. He croaked, his voice still weak and raspy. Martha's eyes welled up with tears as she leaned forward, gently cupping his cheek in her hand. "Oh, Bruce, you're awake," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Thomas reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We've been waiting for this moment for so long, son," he said, his voice filled with warmth. Bruce managed a weak smile, overwhelmed by the emotions that washed over him. It felt like a dream to see his parents again after all these years. Beside his parents, he noticed 2 lady doctors, both with relieved expressions. One of them checked his vital signs while the other took notes on a clipboard. "You gave us quite a scare, Mr. Wayne," one of the doctors said with a smile. "But it's good to see you awake." Bruce tried to sit up. Now, take it easy, Master Bruce," came a familiar and comforting voice. It was Alfred. He listened to Alfred's advice and reclined back onto the bed, realizing just how weak he was. It was as though his body had forgotten how to function after a decade of disuse. Alfred stepped closer to the bed, his eyes filled with a mixture of relief and concern. "It's a miracle that you've awakened after all these years," he said softly. "We feared the worst, but you've proven to be as resilient as ever." Bruce nodded weakly, his gaze shifting between Alfred and his parents. There were so many questions he wanted to ask, so many gaps in his memory that needed to be filled. What happened? How long was I out? He asked in a low voice. Martha squeezed Bruce's hand gently, her expression filled with concern. You were in a coma for 10 years, sweetheart, she replied. A burglar shot you in Crime Alley, almost killing you. We brought you home and called for the best doctors and specialists, but even they couldn't explain why you wouldn't wake up. Bruce remembered everything clearly now. He could recall the terrifying encounter in Crime Alley vividly, and the pain of being shot. It was a wound that nearly cost him his life, and thanks to his bulletproof vest he survived. But the bullet that stuck his neck caused him to lose too much blood and knocked him unconscious. He listened to his parents' explanation, his mind trying to process the fact that he had been in a coma for an entire decade. The memories of that fateful night in Crime Alley came flooding back, and he couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions: anger, frustration, and relief that he was still alive. What about Joe Chill and the Thorn? He asked, glancing at his father's face. Flashback: Thomas Wayne's face contorted with a mixture of rage and sadness as he stood in a dimly lit, underground chamber. The room was filled with the muffled sounds of distant screams and the acrid stench of desperation. In front of him, bound and bloodied, were Joe Chill and Rupert Thorne, the men responsible for the attack on his family a decade ago. The flickering light from a single overhead bulb cast eerie shadows on their faces, accentuating the fear etched in their eyes. You thought you could take everything from me, Thomas growled, his voice low and filled with a cold intensity. You thought you could end our lives and get away with it. But I'm still here. You thought you could take everything from me, Thomas growled, his voice low and filled with a cold intensity. You thought you could end our lives and get away with it. But I'm still here. Joe Chill and Rupert Thorne were barely recognizable, their faces swollen and bruised from the relentless beatings they had endured over the years. Thomas had taken matters into his own hands, using his power and influence as the mayor of Gotham City to hunt them down. After capturing them, he kept them alive, but in a state so wretched that death would have been a mercy. Chill and Thorne had begged for death countless times, but Thomas had denied them that release. He wanted to make them suffer for the pain they had inflicted on his family. He had become a ruthless and vengeful man, driven by a need for retribution. Just kill me, you damn Wayne bastard, Thorne screamed between painful coughs. I can't take this shit anymore. Thomas grabbed Thorne's face in his hands, squeezing hard until the mobster's lips were bleeding. No, you don't deserve such an easy way out, he snarled. You will stay alive until I say otherwise, or else your suffering will be even greater. Thorne struggled futilely against Thomas's grip, his eyes wide with terror. Here, take a good look at this. He took out a phone from his pocket and held it before Thorne's eyes. What a nice family you have. Took 5 years to track them down. Your wife, daughter, and your son. What was his name again? Thomas paused for a second before continuing. Ah yes, Rupert Jr. Such lovely children you have. Thorne's face paled as he stared at the photos of his family. What if I put your kids in the same state as you put my son in? Or worse? Thomas threatened, his voice laced with venom. Imagine seeing your kids suffer the same fate as Bruce. Do you want that? Huh? Answer me. He punched Thorne's jaw. Thorne shook his head frantically, tears streaming down his bruised cheeks. Thomas released his grip and turned to Joe Chill. And you, Joe Chill. You should have died 10 years ago, but because of some shitty luck, you survived. And I will make sure you keep suffering until I decide otherwise. Joe Chill trembled uncontrollably, his body racked with fear and agony. He knew there was no escape from Thomas's wrath. Please. Please just let us go, Thorne pleaded, his voice barely audible through the blood pouring out of his mouth. We'll do anything. Thomas sneered. There's nothing you can offer me that I want. A flash of Bruce's face appeared in his mind, reminding Thomas why he had embarked on this path of vengeance in the first place. Bruce, who suffered unimaginable torment for years because of these two bastards. Joe Chill and Rupert Thorne hung their heads in defeat, knowing that there was nothing they could do to escape their tormentor's grasp. They had made the mistake of crossing Thomas Wayne, and now they would pay the ultimate price for their actions. Pray to God for my son. Beg them to wake him up from his coma, and then I might just kill you quickly instead of torturing you to death, Thomas ordered before turning towards the door, leaving behind 2 broken men who were barely clinging to life. Outside the torture room, Alfred was waiting for him. Transfer them to the Arkham Asylum and make sure they get the special treatment. Thomas walked out of the building. End of flashback. Present time, don't worry about them, Thomas said with a warm smile. The years of trapped rage and sadness melted away as he gazed upon Bruce's face. They won't ever bother us again. Now, all that matters is that you're awake and healthy. Mr. Wayne, I think it's enough talk for today. It's better to let him rest for now. His body needs time to adjust after 10 years of sleep, one of the doctors suggested. Thomas and Martha reluctantly agreed, exchanging heartfelt words with Bruce. Alfred, Martha looked toward the old butler. Please do not worry, Mrs. Wayne. I will take good care of Master Bruce, Alfred reassured with a gentle smile. Thank you, Alfred. Martha returned his smile. Bruce watched as his parents left the room, leaving him with the doctors and Alfred. Could you bring me some water? He said in a low voice. Alfred nodded and quickly fetched a glass of water from a nearby table. He carefully helped Bruce sit up and handed him the glass. Bruce took a few sips, relishing the cool liquid as it quenched his thirst. Thank you, Alfred, he said, his voice still weak. The butler nodded, his expression filled with genuine concern. You're most welcome, Master Bruce. It's good to have you back with us. Bruce couldn't help but smile faintly. Despite the years that had passed, Alfred's unwavering support and care remained a constant source of comfort. The doctors continued to monitor Bruce's vital signs and provide him with a brief examination to ensure that he was stable. They assured him that, with time, his body would regain its strength and adapt to being active again after such a prolonged period of inactivity. Well, it's a rare occurrence to see someone adapting so fast after waking up from a coma after 10 long years. Everything looks normal. What a surprise, Mr. Bruce. We generally feed the patients waking up from a prolonged coma with tubes to prevent infection. But you should be able to eat some real food soon enough. That's good to know. But I am not feeling hungry now, maybe later. And Doc, thank you for everything, Bruce said softly. You can thank me after your complete recovery. For now, try to take it easy, the lady doctor said with a sweet smile. Yeah, I will do that. I am in no hurry. After the examination, they left the room, leaving Bruce alone with Alfred. Alfred, there's so much I need to know, Bruce began, his thoughts swirling with questions about the world that had changed while he was in a coma. Of course, Master Bruce, Alfred replied, his tone reassuring. I will do my best to fill you in on everything that has transpired during your absence. As Bruce settled back onto the bed, he listened attentively to Alfred's account of the events that had unfolded in Gotham City and the world beyond over the past decade. It was a lot to take in, but he was ready to catch up and regain his place in a world that had moved on without him. I see. I am sorry for worrying you all for 10 years. Hope you aren't mad at me, Alfred, he said with a weak chuckle. Alfred gave a warm smile, his eyes reflecting a mix of relief and genuine affection. Not at all, Master Bruce, he replied softly. We were worried, of course, but seeing you awake and well is the greatest joy we could ask for. Your well-being is all that matters. Bruce nodded, feeling a profound sense of gratitude for Alfred's unwavering loyalty and support. Thank you for being here all these years. Alfred's smile widened, and he placed a hand on Bruce's shoulder. It's been my honor and privilege, Master Bruce. Now, try to take some rest. I will be just outside the room. And don't worry, I will keep the door open, just in case you need any assistance. Bruce settled back onto the bed, his mind racing with thoughts of the changes that had occurred during his decade-long absence. Alfred's account of the world's events painted a picture of a Gotham City that had seen both progress and challenges. He couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions as he processed the information. As he lay there, his gaze wandered to his left hand, and he noticed something unusual. On his ring finger was a ring. It was a sleek metallic band with an intricate design, and it pulsed with a faint blue light. So, it wasn't a dream, huh? The lightning ring, he thought, examining the intricate runes and symbols on the ring. Insert an image of Batmobile. After spending some time with Alfred, Bruce gradually began the process of getting back on his feet. The initial days were challenging as his body struggled to readjust to the physical demands of movement after a decade of inactivity. Physical therapy sessions were a regular part of his routine, and under the guidance of expert therapists, he pushed himself to regain his strength, balance, and mobility. Each day, he would work on simple exercises to rebuild his muscle tone, improve his coordination, and increase his endurance. These exercises started from basic movements like stretching and range of motion exercises, eventually progressing to more complex routines involving light weights and resistance bands. He persevered through the muscle soreness and fatigue, keeping his eyes set on the goal of regaining his full physical potential. The pain was a reminder of the progress he was making, motivating him to push harder during each session. As the weeks passed, Bruce's dedication began to pay off. His body gradually grew stronger, and his movements became more fluid. He was able to stand on his own, take a few steps, and eventually walk short distances with the support of a cane. It was a slow and steady process, but he embraced the journey, knowing that patience and persistence would lead him to success. Outside of his physical therapy, he also engaged in mental exercises. He read extensively, catching up on the years he had missed, familiarizing himself with the advancements in various fields. He spent his time reading newspaper and magazines and watching TV to get overall info about the changes. One evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the front garden of Wayne Manor, Bruce received a surprise from his father. With a gentle smile, Thomas beckoned him outside, and Bruce, intrigued, followed his father's lead. As they stepped into the cool evening air, Bruce noticed the big garden lights were on and something remarkable parked in the driveway. A sleek, black vehicle that looked like a work of art and engineering brilliance combined. No way. His eyes widened with awe. How is it? Thomas asked with a warm, satisfied smile, noticing his son's surprised face. It took me quite a while to build this. Bruce approached the vehicle and ran his fingers along its smooth surface, admiring the beautiful details and craftsmanship. It was a sleek design, unlike anything he had seen before, with an aerodynamic shape that hinted at incredible speed and handling capabilities. He looked at his father with excitement, eager for a closer look inside. His father nodded, gesturing for him to go ahead. As Bruce opened the door and slid into the driver's seat, he felt like he was entering another world. Everything was state-of-the-art and futuristic, from the luxurious interior to the cutting-edge technology that filled every inch of space. It was clear that Thomas had poured countless hours and resources into designing this vehicle, creating a masterpiece that was truly one of a kind. Bruce admired his father's passion and ingenuity, feeling fortunate to be able to experience such a unique creation. Although he wanted to create this Batmobile himself, he decided not to dwell on this thought and just enjoy the moment. He checked every nook and cranny of the Batmobile, taking note of all the features and functions. It was exactly how he had drawn it in his sketchbook all those years ago, except better. As Bruce settled in behind the wheel, he couldn't help but grin like a kid on Christmas morning. "So, what do you think?" Thomas asked, leaning against the side of the Batmobile, a proud smile on his face. "Awesome." He slipped out of the driver's seat and turned his attention toward the engine compartment, eager to see the powerhouse hidden underneath. He lifted the hood and peered inside, marveling at the intricate system of components that came together to form such a potent driving force. Bruce was captivated by the Batmobile's engine, a marvel of engineering that was both powerful and efficient. Although it's not as advanced as the ones from the Marvel Universe, it's advanced enough to give all the other cars in this reality a run for money. He ran his fingers over the finely tuned components, marveling at the craftsmanship that had gone into its creation. "Wow, Dad, this engine is incredible," he exclaimed, his eyes filled with admiration. "I can't believe you built this." Thomas smiled modestly, enjoying his son's amazement. "Well, I had a lot of help from Lucius Fox, a close friend of mine." "Lucius Fox, huh? It would seem that my meddling with the timeline has started to take effect already," Bruce mused to himself. Although he had yet to meet Lucius Fox in this timeline, Bruce knew the man would play an important role in shaping his future. Fox was a brilliant scientist and engineer who would go on to become Wayne Enterprises' chief technical officer and the primary supplier of Batman's equipment. Bruce closed the hood and turned to his father, his mind racing with possibilities. "So what else can this thing do? Don't tell me you added all those weapons too." Thomas chuckled at his son's enthusiasm. "What do you think?" "You got to be kidding me." Bruce grinned from ear to ear. "Go ahead, check it out," Thomas encouraged, stepping aside to give his son access to the Batmobile's arsenal of gadgets and weapons. Bruce climbed back into the driver's seat and activated the controls, revealing a hidden panel of buttons and switches. He eagerly pressed each button, triggering a series of mechanisms that unfolded from various parts of the Batmobile's exterior. The first weapon revealed itself as a pair of retractable blades that extended from the front bumper, perfect for slicing through obstacles or enemies. Next, two grappling hooks emerged from the sides, ready to be fired at targets for quick escapes or strategic maneuvers. Finally, two small guns appeared from the front fenders, providing additional firepower when needed. Bruce was amazed by the Batmobile's diverse arsenal, impressed by his father's creativity and ingenuity. It was clear that Thomas had spared no expense in ensuring that the Batmobile was equipped with the most advanced and effective tools possible, demonstrating his commitment to excellence. "Wait. Is this? His eyes fell on the red flip switch near the gearbox. You added tracking missiles? He asked excitedly. Thomas nodded with a smirk. And smoke bombs, plus a couple of things here and there. Bruce couldn't contain his excitement. This car is freaking awesome, Dad. Thomas watched his son's giddy expression with amusement, glad to see that he still retained his boyish enthusiasm. He placed a hand on Bruce's shoulder, giving it a fond squeeze. Glad you like it, champ. So you better get healthy fast, and I will teach you how to drive. Then we can take this beauty for a ride. Bruce grinned widely, his eyes shining with excitement. Yes, sir. Now, let's head inside. It's getting late, and I don't want to get yelled at by your mother again. Thomas patted his son's back affectionately as they made their way back inside the manor. Bruce paused in his tracks, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Hey Dad, how fast does this baby go? Well, that's for you to find out when you learn how to drive it, Thomas replied mysteriously, leaving Bruce to wonder just how fast the Batmobile could actually go. This is nice. With this Ver 1.0, I will have a general idea of how far technology has progressed in this reality, he thought to himself as he walked alongside his father. Well, not that I need a driving lesson, oh well. Dinner table. Bruce and Thomas returned to the dining room and found Martha waiting for them, her lips curving into a tender smile as she observed her husband and son approaching the dinner table. What are you guys up to? Martha inquired curiously, noticing their wide smiles. Oh, nothing much. Thomas gave her a wink as he pulled out her chair for her. Just showing Bruce the latest project I've been working on. She raised an eyebrow. The Batmobile? Yep, Bruce chimed in enthusiastically. It's amazing, Mom. Is that so? She smirked, shaking her head fondly. It sure is, Thomas laughed as he took his seat across from his wife. You should have seen his face when he saw it. Bruce rolled his eyes, feigning annoyance. Come on, Dad, I was just surprised, that's all. Martha chuckled at their exchange, reaching across the table to take her husband's hand in hers. Her eyes shone with adoration as she gazed at the two most important people in her life. Well, as long as you boys are having fun, that's all that matters to me. Ah, this is nice, Bruce thought to himself, observing his parents' loving interactions. He never expected to be part of such a warm and loving family after being stuck in another universe, but he was grateful to be given the chance to experience it. Thomas cleared his throat, turning his attention to the food on the table. Let's eat before this delicious food gets cold. Everyone eagerly dug into the meal, enjoying each other's company as they savored the delicious flavors and aromas. It was a simple moment, but it filled Bruce's heart with happiness, reminding him of the value of family and togetherness. Meanwhile in Arkham Asylum, in the dark and grim confines of Arkham Asylum, Joe Chill and Rupert Thorne were subjected to the relentless torment of their fellow inmates. The twisted and sadistic individuals that inhabited the asylum saw the two men as easy prey, and they took every opportunity to make their lives a living hell. As the inmates gathered around, a sinister excitement filled the air. They had forced Joe Chill and Rupert Thorne into a makeshift arena, a dimly lit cell where the cold, damp walls bore witness to countless acts of violence and cruelty. Chill and Thorne, both battered and broken from years of suffering, stood at opposite ends of the arena. Their faces were swollen, their bodies bruised, and their spirits shattered. They knew that there was no escape from this nightmarish ordeal. Fight! 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 The chant of the inmates echoed through the cell, a chilling chorus that served as a cruel reminder of their audience's sadistic pleasure. Thorne, desperate to avoid further punishment, made the first move. He lunged at Joe Chill with a wild, uncoordinated swing. Chill, though weakened, managed to sidestep the attack, causing Thorne to stumble and crash into the cell's grimy wall. The inmates erupted in laughter, their cruel taunts filling the air. They reveled in the sight of two former criminals now reduced to pitiful shadows of their former selves. Chill seized the opportunity to strike back, landing a feeble punch on Thorne's ribs. It was a weak blow, lacking the strength and precision of his earlier years as a thug. Thorne grunted in pain but retaliated with a clumsy kick that barely made contact. The fight continued in this pitiful fashion, a stark contrast to the once mighty individuals who had terrorized Gotham City. Each punch, kick, and stumble served as a grim reminder of the consequences of their actions and the depths to which they had fallen. The inmates watched with sadistic glee, placing bets on which of the two would be the first to collapse from exhaustion or sustain a serious injury. It was a grotesque spectacle, a reflection of the darkness that permeated the walls of Arkham Asylum. In the midst of the chaos, a deranged inmate shouted, "Kill each other. Show us some real blood." His words were met with cheers and jeers from the others, their thirst for violence insatiable. Joe Chill and Rupert Thorne, once adversaries in the criminal underworld, now found themselves bound by a horrific fate. They had become victims of the very madness and brutality they had once perpetuated. As the brutal fight raged on, the inmates' chants grew louder, drowning out the anguished cries of the two men who had fallen so far from their former lives of crime and power. In the heart of Arkham Asylum, where madness reigned supreme, their suffering was just another chapter in the twisted tale of Gotham City's underworld. 2 days later, how long do we have to endure this hellhole? It's been 10 freaking years. You told me, someone is going to get us out of here in a few days. Where the hell is that bastard? Joe Chill spat at Thorne in rage. You weren't joking when you said you still have a way to contact outside, were you? Thorne glanced around the cell, ensuring no one was eavesdropping before he continued. His name is Victor Fries. He's a genius scientist who used to work for Wayne Enterprises. Chill furrowed his brow, trying to recall the name. Fries. Who the hell is that? Thorne explained. He was fired by Thomas Wayne himself for using Wayne Enterprises' resources to fund his cryogenic experiments, all in an attempt to revive his wife who's in a cryogenic coma. Fries was driven to madness by the loss of his wife and became obsessed with cryonics. Understanding dawned on Chill's face. And how is he going to break us out? Thorne leaned even closer, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. Fries believes that I have access to some equipment that he needs for his experiments. He's been trying to recreate the technology he was working on at Wayne Enterprises, and I've promised him access to that equipment in exchange for our freedom. So, we are counting on a lunatic to break us out? Do you even have that equipment? And how the hell did you contact him? I am here with you all the time. I never saw you talking to anyone other than when they called to screw us over, Chill asked, raising his brows. Thorne smirked, revealing a hidden sense of confidence. Oh, I have my ways. Wayne thinks he is the only one who has connections. As for the equipment, do you think I have anything left after Wayne screwed everyone over to the other side? Then, Joe narrowed his eyebrows. Thorne leaned in closer, his eyes gleaming with a cunning glint. You see, Chill, it's all about playing the game. Fries may be a genius, but he's also a broken man driven by obsession. I've managed to manipulate him by offering the promise of access to equipment he believes is crucial for his experiments. He's so consumed by his quest to revive his wife that he'll do anything to obtain what he needs. Chill listened intently, starting to grasp the plan. So we make Fries believe that Wayne has everything he needs, and he'll confront Wayne to get it. In the chaos that follows, we slip away unnoticed. Thorne nodded, a sly smile forming on his lips. Exactly. Wayne and Fries will be too preoccupied with their own vendettas to notice us making our escape. And by the time they realize what's happened, we'll be long gone, far away from Gotham. Chill smirked, beginning to see the potential of their scheme. And where do we go once we're out of here? Thorne's eyes flickered with rage. Anywhere but here, Chill. Gotham has become a twisted nightmare, and I have no intention of returning to a city that has brought us nothing but suffering. We'll disappear, start anew, then when we have enough power. He punched hard on the cell wall. We will come back for the Waynes. And we will pay him the 10 years of torments with interest. Wayne Manor, hidden cave. Alfred closed the computer and made his way toward the lift. Thomas and Martha had to leave early, and Alfred had already left to take care of an errand for Thomas. They were hesitating to leave Bruce alone. Hey, don't worry about me besides. The doctors are with me and the security guards are always around the house. Bruce reassured them with a warm smile. I will be fine. Martha walked closer and planted a gentle kiss on his forehead. All right, take care, sweetie. Thomas walked over and patted his back. Okay, take care, son. And call us in case of an emergency. Sure. You two take care, he nodded. Soon, Bruce was alone, with 2 hot doctors who were helping him with therapy exercises. 2 hot MILFs. This is what I call therapy, Bruce mused as he looked at Dr. Leslie's hot body and then Dr. Michelle's voluptuous curves. Dr. Leslie. Green iris, short blonde hair, and she has kept her body well maintained. Well, she is a health therapist, after all. She is around 36 to 37. As for Dr. Michelle, she has hazel iris, long brunette hair, and she got 2 big melons, and a curvy but well-shaped figure. She is probably in her 40s, but looking at her hot body, well, she can easily pass as someone around her 30s. For the last few days, Bruce overheard them talking about their private life. Dr. Leslie's husband is apparently a famous surgeon, and he is always abroad for his job, leaving her alone at home. Last week, he returned home, but he didn't even try to pay any attention to her. She was so sexually frustrated that, for the first time, she went to an R18 toy store and bought a set of dildos and a vibrator. On the other hand, Dr. Michelle's husband can't satisfy her needs in bed anymore, so she has been relying on her dildos, but she has been craving some good smashing. "So, Mr. Wayne, how do you feel today?" Dr. Leslie asked as she looked at his vitals on the machine. "I feel just fine, but..." Bruce paused. "My muscles have been a bit stiff lately. Maybe you can give me a massage, Dr. Leslie. It might relax my muscles." Michelle chuckled. "That's a great idea. I can also give you a massage, Mr. Wayne. My hands have the magical touch." "Well, all right, thank you, doctors," Bruce replied with a charming smile. He dropped his clothes and wore nothing but his briefs. Both the MILFs looked hungrily at his athletic and ripped body as he lay on the bed on his stomach. "What the hell? When did I get abs?" His eyes went toward his body and then to the ring. Last night he was so thin. But there was something far more pressing matters right before him. Two MILFs. Dr. Leslie and Michelle looked at each other and nodded in agreement, as they silently decided how to proceed with their secret seduction of Bruce Wayne. A young man who is 18 and has just woken up from a 10-year-long coma. They can sense that he might have pent-up desires that he really needs a release for. Dr. Leslie went first as she gently started rubbing his shoulders. "Tell me if it hurts. We are only trying to release the tension." Thanks, Doc," he sighed and relaxed his body. Then Dr. Michelle joined Dr. Leslie, taking position near his hips, while she began to gently rub his right leg and occasionally reached over to massage his behind through the fabric. Michelle whispered in his ear, "How do you feel now, Bruce? Are you okay with this?" Nice massage. Keep going, I trust you too." He mumbled as he started feeling horny. This was the chance Dr. Leslie was waiting for. "All right, Bruce, but as I work on you, please don't get too embarrassed or tell us to stop if you start to feel something else, okay?" The brunette-haired beauty rubbed his thigh while pressing her large tits against his side, as she worked his entire leg slowly, while her colleague continued to rub his shoulder and back, letting him relax further into their massage. Okay," Bruce said, enjoying their soothing touches. Suddenly, Dr. Leslie's phone rang. "Ugh. My husband has such rotten timing." She got down from the bed, walked out of the room, and took the call. After a few minutes, she came back. "Well, my husband got into a fight in the mall. The police detained him." Dr. Leslie looked really frustrated. "I'm extremely sorry, Mr. Bruce, I would have to go. It was not my intention to leave." "Oh, that sucks." Bruce looked a little disappointed. "But I understand. Maybe we can continue where we left off another day." "Certainly, thanks, Mr. Wayne. As much as I would love to dump that moron of a husband, I still need him to give me a mortgage for that new house I am eyeing at the Upper East Side. Ugh. Why the heck do I have such rotten luck?" She hurriedly collected her belongings and walked out of the room. Bruce turned toward the brunette female doctor. "Guess it's just two of us then, Doc?" She hummed playfully. "Let me lock the door after she leaves." Michelle walked out and locked the main door after her friend left with a sad face, returning to the bedroom. Now Bruce is lying there, semi-naked, and vulnerable on a bed with this MILF doc. She climbed on his bed, smiling wickedly. "Where was I?" Michelle asked, mischievously. Bruce noticed her looking at him like a cat stares at her prey. You were massaging my legs." "Okay, let's resume our session then, Bruce." She started working on his thighs again, rubbing and squeezing them firmly, occasionally reaching over to squeeze his firm-ass cheeks through his boxers. Then she saddled on him and pressed her large melons on his back while massaging his lower back muscles. Bruce could clearly feel her soft nipples poking into him through their clothing. Then he got an amazing BJ from a hot MILF and lived happily ever after. Check the original version for the full scene. "That was amazing," she exclaimed breathlessly. "Yeah, it sure was," he agreed as he stroked her hair gently. In the depths of the cold, dark night, Victor Fries, a man consumed by obsession and driven by grief, prepared to execute his plan to free Joe Chill and Rupert Thorne from the clutches of Arkham Asylum. His heart, once filled with love for his cryogenically preserved wife, now burned with vengeful determination. Fries, now known as Mr. Freeze due to his tragic accident that left him dependent on a cryogenic suit, stood in the shadows outside the asylum. The glow of the moon illuminated his cold, blue-tinged skin, giving him an eerie appearance. He adjusted the control panel on his suit, ensuring it was functioning at optimal levels, ready for the assault. He activated a device he had secretly planted within the asylum, which initiated a power surge, disrupting the facility's security systems. Lights flickered, alarms blared, and chaos ensued within the asylum's walls. As guards and staff rushed to handle the sudden power outage, Fries seized the opportunity. He burst through the asylum's gates, encased in his cryogenic suit, the freezing mist trailing in his wake. The guards attempted to stop him, but they were no match for his arsenal of freezing weapons. Within minutes, the guards were lying incapacitated on the ground, coated with a thick layer of ice. The doors of the asylum swung open as Fries blasted his way inside. More guards rushed to meet him. He aimed his cryoguns at them, unleashing a torrent of sub-zero blasts. The guards fell before him like frozen statues, their bodies encased in ice. He pressed forward, undeterred by the resistance. The turrets mounted on the wall tracked his movement and began firing. Bullets ricocheted harmlessly off his cryogenic suit, unable to penetrate its impenetrable surface. Fries retaliated, unleashing his cryoblasters and reducing the turrets to piles of frozen debris. He continued his rampage through the asylum, leaving a trail of frozen destruction in his wake. On his way, he broke the doors to several cells, freeing the inmates. Some ran in fear, while others joined his assault, reveling in the chaos. Finally, he reached the maximum security wing where Joe Chill and Rupert Thorne were being held. Before him stood a solid steel door, reinforced to withstand even the most powerful attacks. He did not hesitate. He powered up his cryoblasters and unleashed a barrage of sub-zero energy beams upon the door. It groaned under the immense pressure, but refused to yield. Undeterred, Fries increased the level of his attack. The cryogenic beams grew stronger, colder, and more powerful. The steel door began to buckle and crack under the relentless assault. Finally, with one final blast, it shattered into pieces, granting him access to the cell block beyond. Inside this wing, the metahuman criminals were kept behind multiple containment fields. These fields were designed to restrain and suppress their superhuman abilities, rendering them helpless. But he could care less as he made his way to the darkest corner of the cell block. Joe Chill was sitting in his cell, handcuffed to a chair, when Mr. Freeze entered. Fries wasted no time in freeing him from his restraints. "Where is Thorne?" Fries growled, his voice distorted and mechanized by his cryogenic suit. Chill pointed to the cell across from his own, where Thorne was imprisoned. Fries quickly destroyed the containment field surrounding his cell and freed him as well. "It's about damn time," Thorne sneered as he stepped out of his cell. "Now, let's get out of here." With Joe Chill and Rupert Thorne now liberated from their cells in Arkham Asylum, chaos continued to unfold within the facility. The inmates, fueled by the madness that permeated the asylum, had joined Mr. Freeze's rampage, creating a frenzied and unpredictable atmosphere. As the group made their way through the dimly lit corridors, Fries took the lead with his cryogenic suit, freezing any security personnel who dared to challenge them. The path to freedom was treacherous, with alarms blaring and emergency lights casting eerie shadows on the walls. Thorne, emboldened by their escape, couldn't resist taunting their captors as they passed by a group of disoriented guards. "You fools thought you could hold us here forever. You underestimate the power of revenge." Chill, on the other hand, remained silent, his thoughts filled with a mixture of relief and anticipation. He had spent a decade within the cold and unforgiving walls of Arkham, and now, the taste of freedom was within reach. As they approached the asylum's main entrance, Fries activated the security override system he had prepared in advance. The massive steel doors slowly began to open, revealing the moonlit night beyond. However, the chaos has alerted the GCPD, and thanks to Thomas Wayne's order, they were permitted to open, shoot to kill. The GCPD officers blocked the only bridge, connecting Arkham to the city, their weapons raised and trained on the group of escapees. They were clad in tactical gear, ready to prevent the inmates from fleeing into the city. "Freeze!" one of the officers shouted, his voice filled with authority and determination. "Drop your weapons and surrender now." Mr. Freeze's cold mechanical voice resonated within his cryogenic suit as he faced the armed officers. "You will not stand in my way." He reached into a compartment on his cryogenic suit and pulled out several cryogenic bombs, each emitting an eerie blue glow. With a precise flick of his wrist, he tossed the bombs towards the officers. "Open fire." The officers began to shoot, but the cryogenic bombs exploded upon impact, releasing a wave of intense cold that froze the ground and the officers' weapons. Ice quickly formed around their feet, rendering them immobile. It was a calculated move by Mr. Freeze, designed to incapacitate the police without causing them permanent harm. "Follow me," Freeze said. The group hurried towards the edge of the bridge, overlooking the dark waters below. He used his cryobeams to create a makeshift ice slide, a frozen pathway leading down to the raging waters. "Move," he commanded, and the group slid down the ice slide, Chill and Thorn stumbling but managing to maintain their balance. The icy surface was slippery, adding to the adrenaline-fueled escape. At the base of the slide, a small boat awaited them, hidden in the shadows. It was a sleek vessel, equipped with a powerful engine that would propel them away from the asylum and towards the safety of the city. As the group reached the bottom of the ice slide, Freeze urged them to hurry into the boat. Chill and Thorn scrambled aboard, their faces a mix of fear and excitement. They knew that this was their chance to escape the clutches of the law and exact their revenge on those who had wronged them. Mr. Freeze activated the engine, the roar echoing in the still night air. The boat surged forward, slicing through the dark waters of the river. They were leaving Arkham Asylum behind, the chaos they had incited fading into the distance. However, bang! A bullet pierced through Chill's head, killing him on the spot, then followed by another bullet that pierced through Thorn's head. "No!" Freeze's scream was drowned by the raging waves of the water. Coldface, image of Mr. Freeze. Coldface, far away, location, classified, targets eliminated, a man, hidden in the shadows took out his phone and checked his account balance. "Nice doing business with you, Mr. Butler." Meanwhile at the mayor's office. In the mayor's office, Thomas Wayne's phone buzzed, disrupting the heavy silence that had settled over the room. He picked it up, noticing the caller ID displayed as Alfred. "Alfred, what's the situation?" he asked with a hint of concern in his voice. "Good evening, sir. I'm pleased to inform you that the job has been successfully completed." Alfred's voice came through the phone, laced with the usual calm professionalism. Thomas couldn't help but smile with relief. "That's excellent news, Alfred. Thank you for handling it. Now, it's time for us to move forward." "Indeed, sir. I'll await your further instructions," the butler replied. He leaned back in his chair, contemplating the next steps. He then had a thought that brought a genuine smile to his face. "Alfred, how about we throw a party to celebrate Bruce's quick recovery? I think it's about time we bring some joy back into this house." A sense of warmth and enthusiasm crept into Alfred's tone. "That's a splendid idea, sir. I shall start making the necessary arrangements immediately." "Ha ha ha. Take it easy now. We have a week to prepare," he said with a smile as he picked up the photo frame from the table. 3 days after the dramatic prison breakout orchestrated by Mr. Freeze, life at Wayne Manor had settled into a semblance of normalcy. The celebration party was just around the corner, and the mansion buzzed with preparations and excitement. In one corner of the mansion, Bruce Wayne sat in his room, gazing out of the window at the beautiful garden below. His rapid recovery had been nothing short of miraculous. Thanks to the advanced medical care provided by his father, his body healed at an astonishing pace. His strength and mobility had returned, but he still relied on a cane for support when walking, a reminder of his recent ordeal. Despite the progress in his physical health, Bruce found himself growing restless. He longed to step out into the world, to explore Gotham City and its mysteries. The confines of Wayne Manor, no matter how luxurious, had started to feel like a gilded cage. "I can't just stay cooped up here forever," he muttered to himself, his frustration mounting. He let out a sigh, his eyes wandering towards the window again. The view outside beckoned, tantalizing and full of promise. The garden, the grounds beyond, and the world beyond them lay open, waiting for him. His eyes fell on the lightning ring, and with that came an idea. He decided to put on a disguise and use the ring's teleportation power to sneak out of the manor. Bruce changed into inconspicuous clothes, pulled on a hat, took his wallet filled with the cash he saved before his coma, and used the ring to teleport outside of Wayne Manor. He materialized behind a hedge, away from prying eyes. There was a moment of disorientation, but it quickly passed as he took in the sights around him. Gotham City stretched out before him in all its grandeur. He marveled at the tall buildings and bustling streets, a far cry from the tranquility of Wayne Manor. The city was alive with people, activity, and possibility. The city looks clean and lively as compared to the past. The Wayne Foundation has worked hard to restore order and prosperity to Gotham, Bruce thought, proud of what his father had achieved. "Dad is doing great as a mayor," he mused, filled with admiration. His eyes went toward the alleys, which looked clean. The police patrols were frequent and vigilant. He walked along the sidewalk, enjoying the sights and sounds of the city. It felt good to be free and independent, without Alfred fussing over him or his parents telling him what to do. His cane tapped lightly against the pavement as he strolled along, taking in the atmosphere. It was cold outside. Winter seems to have arrived early this year. Bruce shivered a little, pulling his coat closer around him. His eyes went toward a cafe nearby, its inviting warmth drawing him inside. Bruce entered the cafe, inhaling the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods. He took a seat by the window, gazing out at the passers-by. The waitress greeted him cheerfully and took his order, returning a few minutes later with a steaming mug of coffee and a slice of cake. He sipped his coffee, savoring the rich flavor. The cake was delicious too, melting in his mouth. This tastes freaking great, he thought, relishing every bite. It felt strange to enjoy such simple pleasures, free from the burden of wealth and status. He wondered if he could ever get used to living a normal life. In his past life, he lived as Tony Stark, in this life as Bruce Wayne. Somewhere along the way, he has forgotten his real identity. Jack Lance, a regular college student with average grades. Jack Lance, he liked the sound of that name. It's been a while since he last used it, preferring to go by Bruce Wayne instead. But now, sitting in the cafe, he felt more like Jack Lance than Bruce Wayne. It was liberating, being able to shed his privileged identity for a while and experience the city as a regular person. As Bruce enjoyed his coffee and cake, he noticed a group of young men approaching the cafe. They seemed to be university students, dressed casually in jeans and jackets. They were gossiping loudly among themselves, talking about something that caught Bruce's attention. "Have you heard about the prison breakout?" One of the students asked his friends. It was all over the news. A bunch of criminals tried to escape from Arkham Asylum. Another student nodded, looking worried. "Yeah, I saw it. Luckily, GCPD is doing their job seriously. They shot them dead." "Mr. Freeze escaped," the first student added, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "They say he's hiding somewhere in the city. But I guess the mayor won't sit still. My dad says the mayor has put a special task force together to capture him." Bruce listened with interest. He was so busy with his therapy sessions and drawing his next project that he didn't pay much attention to the news. And his father doesn't talk about his office work at home. "Victor Fries, huh?" He narrowed his brows slightly. The man who experimented with cryonics and ended up turning himself into Mr. Freeze. He has read about him in comics when he was Jack Lance. Victor Fries was a brilliant scientist, looking to find a cure for his dying wife Nora Fries. He lost his research grant due to unethical experiments and became desperate, stealing chemicals from Wayne Enterprises. He was caught and kicked out of the Wayne Enterprise. Shit. Saving the mom and dad changed history. Things are different now. Everything is flowing faster than I expected. Need to create the arc reactor fast. He thought anxiously, paying for the food and leaving the cafe. On his stroll, he walked into a park where he saw kids playing football. Bruce smiled, watching them run around happily. He remembered playing football with his friends in high school. Those were some of the best times of his life, filled with laughter and fun. He took a seat on a bench, content to simply watch the children play. First the arc reactor, then the armor and weapons. Need to meet Lucius Fox soon, he planned mentally, leaning back on the bench and closing his eyes. He breathed deeply, enjoying the crisp air. "Hey, mister." A cheerful voice called out to Bruce. He opened his eyes and saw a teen girl in shabby clothes standing near the bench. She had short, messy dark hair and dirty hands, holding a cup in her hand. "Would you like to buy some flowers?" she asked Bruce with a bright smile. "They're only $2 each." His eyes went toward the flower plants at the edge of the park. Well, except the flowers were all missing. Bruce realized she must have picked them from there and is selling them now. "Sure," he said, smiling back at her. He bought a flower from her. "What's your name, kid?" "Selina," she replied with a grin. "Selina Kyle." Insert image of Selina. Interesting. If she is Selina Kyle, the future Catwoman. As far as I know, she used to be a street thief before becoming Catwoman. He observed her appearance. Selina was scrawny and undernourished, probably struggling to survive on the streets. Her clothes were worn and threadbare, showing signs of rough treatment. He took out a $100 bill from his pocket and held it before her. "You know how to pickpocket?" Selina's eyes widened in surprise. unsure whether Bruce was joking or not. She was looking around, fearing someone might catch her red-handed. Bruce chuckled. "Relax, I won't tell anyone. Answer me, and I will give you this money." Selina hesitated for a moment before her eyes fell on his cane. She thought if she snatched the bill from his hand and ran away, he wouldn't be able to chase her. With confidence, she snatched the bill from his hand and started running away. Bruce laughed, shaking his head in amusement. He watched her disappear into the distance. "Just as I thought," he smirked. With a flicker of lightning, he disappeared. In an alley, phew. "What a dumb man," Selina exclaimed, examining the bill to check if it was real or not. This is the first time she has seen a bill this large. Usually, she picks pockets of unsuspecting people and steals wallets containing a few tens or twenties at most. "So stupid," she smirked, feeling lucky to snatch such a fat bill today. "I can eat for weeks with this money." Suddenly, a shadow fell over her. Selina turned around, startled by the sight of Bruce looming over her. "He has a cane, so he won't be able to catch me is what you thought, right?" Bruce taunted her. Selina froze, unable to comprehend how he appeared out of nowhere. She stepped back, clutching the bill protectively. "I am Bruce Wayne." He took off his hat and extended his hand toward her with a warm smile. "Nice to meet you, Selina Kyle." "W. Wayne?" "Like the Mayor Wayne." She gulped, her eyes widening in shock. "Yes," he confirmed. "Thomas Wayne is my dad. You know the mayor." Selina nodded slowly, still trying to process the situation. She nervously shook his hand, her palms sweaty with anxiety. "How did you follow me so fast?" she asked him warily. "You weren't chasing me." Bruce waved his hand dismissively. "That's not important. I will ask you a few questions. Your answers will determine your future. If your answer satisfies me, I will help you get out of this street life. If not, I will just leave you here." Selina frowned, wondering what kind of questions Bruce Wayne wanted to ask her. She glanced at him suspiciously, not sure if he was joking or serious. "Go ahead, it's not like I have anything to lose." Selina shrugged her shoulders indifferently. She doesn't believe Bruce would actually help her get out of street life. No one would do that, they all have selfish motives. Bruce nodded. "Do you wish to leave the streets?" She rolled her eyes. "Of course. Who wants to live like this?" He ignored her sarcasm, continuing his questions. "If given the chance, what would you want to become?" Selina pursed her lips, thinking hard. No one has ever asked her such a question usually. People only cared about beating her after catching her stealing their stuff. She pondered for a moment. "I don't know. Too busy surviving out here to think about the future." Bruce tilted his head slightly. "You have any family?" "Dead," she replied curtly, averting her eyes. Memories of her parents flashed through her mind. Her alcoholic father used to hit her mother often. Selina hated her father for hurting her mom and resented her mother for not standing up for herself. One night, her mother cut her wrist and bled to death in the bathtub. Her father died due to excessive drinking in the following month. Bruce sensed her pain and nodded sympathetically. "What about Maggie?" He asked about her sister who was adopted by a nearby church. Selina's expression darkened. "Who told you about Maggie? Did you spy on me?" She glared at Bruce angrily, clenching her fists. "I am the one asking questions here." Bruce remained calm despite her hostility. "Tell me, do you wish to meet Maggie?" She bit her lip, hesitating for a moment before nodding silently. She misses Maggie. She used to take care of her when they were small, always protecting her from their abusive father. When Maggie got adopted, Selina ran away from the orphanage. She couldn't bear to part with her sister. Bruce smiled, sensing her honesty. "Work for me, Selina Kyle. I will help you get back on your feet and make sure to help you reunite with your sister. You will never have to steal or run. I will take care of you and your sister. All I ask you in return is your help." "My help?" She raised an eyebrow skeptically. Bruce is a billionaire. What help does he need from her? "Yes," he continued. "You have skills. Pickpocketing, lockpicking, climbing walls, and rooftops. These are useful skills. But I will polish them and sharpen them to perfection. I will provide you with proper education and training. You will learn martial arts and become proficient with weapons. You will learn stealth, espionage, and infiltration techniques. I will also teach you hacking and technology." Selina blinked in confusion, overwhelmed by his offer. Wow. Wait a minute. She interrupted Bruce. You are offering me a lot education, training, even helping me reunite with Maggie. But why do you need my help? What do you want me to do? Are you trying to kill someone? Bruce burst out laughing. Ha! Kill someone? No. All you need to know now is that I need your skills for my future plans. Future plans. Selena scratched her head in bewilderment. I don't understand. All in due time. You have much to learn first, he assured her. You accept my offer? Selena stared at Bruce, uncertainly. His offer was tempting, but she didn't trust him yet. She needs to know more about him before deciding whether to accept or reject his proposal. However, his offer was too good to decline. A chance like this may never come again. Selena decided to take a leap of faith and agreed to Bruce's proposal. As long as Maggie is taken care of, I don't care what he makes me do. She reasoned internally. I will kill if that's what it takes to get a good life for Maggie. And considering his way of talking, I don't think he is like those other rich kids. I can tell he isn't after my body. Even though my top is a bit torn and my chest is popping out. He hasn't even glanced at my cleavage. I will take the deal. But I want my sister safe first, Selena declared boldly, staring straight into Bruce's eyes. She hopes Maggie is happy and healthy. Years of abuse and neglect have left her emotionally scarred. She blamed herself for Maggie getting adopted. Maybe if she stopped their father from drinking, he would have changed his ways. I want her to live a good life, happy, safe, and healthy. Can you promise me that? Bruce extended his hand towards Selena with a confident smile. Deal. She took his hand firmly, sealing their agreement. Bruce then took off his jacket and put it around her shoulder. Selena blushed, feeling warm and cozy wearing Bruce's jacket. Thanks, she mumbled, clenching the warm jacket. It was cold outside. Winter was approaching Gotham City. Well, he touched her head and used his teleportation skill. A bright flash of blue lightning covered Selena. Bruce disappeared alongside her. They reappeared in the alley near the Wayne Manor. Blee. Selena fell on her knees and vomited. Teleporting for the first time made her nauseous. Bruce chuckled and helped her stand up. What did you do? What was that? That would be our little secret, he winked mysteriously as he waited for her to recover. Then they made their way toward the manor. Selena, with a mischievous glint in her eyes, spoke. So, is this the life of a billionaire? You can just teleport out whenever you want? Is that new tech? Bruce laughed. No, not exactly. It's just a little trick I have. Maybe I will tell you more about it in the future. Alfred, looking relieved to see Bruce safe, hurried over to them. As they approached the gate, he saw Alfred rushing out with the guards. Ah. He smiled awkwardly. Did something happen? She asked, noticing the rush. Well, I sneaked out to the city alone without informing them. They must have freaked out. Master Bruce, you gave us quite a scare. I trust you've had a satisfactory excursion. Alfred asked with a stern expression. Haha. Sorry about that. I just couldn't take it anymore and slipped out. He gave Alfred an awkward grin, rubbing his head. Alfred sighed. No matter, what matters is your safety. He then glanced at the girl following Bruce. And who might be this young lady? Introduce yourself. Bruce smiled, urging her to step forward. Selena Kyle. She gave him a sheepish grin while introducing herself, hiding behind his back as if feeling shy. This was her first time seeing so many bodyguards, and she is about to enter a huge-ass mansion. If anyone told her she was going to live in the Wayne Manor with her sister yesterday, she would laugh in their face and kick them between their legs. Nice to meet you, Miss Kyle. Alfred nodded at her, not giving her a weird look, but a warm welcome instead. Please come inside. You two must be cold and tired. Bruce thanked Alfred and urged Selena to follow him. As they entered the Wayne Manor, Selena gasped in awe. Everything looked shiny, sparkling, and luxurious. The interior design was grand. Golden chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Exquisite paintings decorated the walls, marble floors, and crystal lights. Everything looked elegant and majestic. Bruce noticed her reaction and smiled. Welcome home. Home. Selena mumbled softly, tears welling up in her eyes, blurring her vision. This is a freaking palace. Bruce chuckled. He understood how she felt. He looked toward Alfred and gave a tiny nod. Alfred immediately understood Bruce's signal. He ordered the maids to prepare Selena a bath and find some suitable clothes for her. Go on. No need to be afraid. I know it's hard to trust anyone after everything. So, let's earn each other's trust first. Just relax and freshen up. The maids will help you. I will talk to my dad about Maggie, Bruce encouraged Selena. He could tell she was uncomfortable being surrounded by strangers. Selena hesitated for a moment before finally leaving with the maids. I don't know what to make of this situation, she thought inwardly as she followed the maids to the bathroom. Is Bruce really trustworthy? Or is this all a prank? Rich bastards love playing cruel pranks on homeless kids, humiliating and abusing us. No, Bruce is somewhat unique. Just don't screw this up, Selena. Maggie depends on you. So, Alfred turned toward Bruce with a stern gaze, crossing his arms. She will become my assistant. She has potential, raw talents, and skills that need polishing, Bruce explained briefly. I see. You must be thinking of the future. Alfred nodded thoughtfully. Yes. Dad has his trusted people, and I need mine to make my dreams come true, Bruce confirmed Alfred's speculation. He needs loyal followers who will help him cleanse Gotham later. Selena is the first person he recruited. Very well. I shall inform Master Thomas about Miss Kyle, he said respectfully. Oh, you haven't told him that I sneaked out, have you? Bruce asked cautiously. He knew his father would ground him if he found out that he sneaked out of the house without any bodyguards, just when he was recovering. Just this once, the butler smirked playfully. Thank you, Alfred, he grinned. Now, you better get changed before your parents arrive. They will be home any minute now. Alfred shooed Bruce upstairs toward his room. All right. As Bruce hurried to his room to change, he could feel a mix of excitement and nervousness building up inside him. He knew that he had taken a bold step by bringing Selena into the Wayne Manor and offering her a chance for a better life. Now, he needed to discuss this with his parents and seek their understanding and support. Quickly changing into more formal attire, he took a deep breath to steady himself before heading down to the living room. He saw his parents chatting happily with each other while sipping tea prepared by the maid. There he is. Thomas smiled as he spotted Bruce walking in. Bruce cleared his throat and slowly made his way toward his parents before giving each of them a hug. His father rubbed his hair before chuckling, and his mother gently pinched his cheeks. Seeing their warm reception, he heaved a sigh of relief. His worries vanished in thin air. Thomas and Martha smiled warmly. Take a seat, son. Thomas gestured at the sofa for him to take a seat. Bruce nodded and sat next to his parents. I heard you brought a new guest, Thomas inquired, glancing at Bruce. Yes. Her name is Selena Kyle, orphaned and homeless. She lives on the streets. Dad, I want to take responsibility for her, Bruce declared firmly. Martha widened her eyes. She didn't expect Bruce to bring a street urchin into the Wayne Manor. But she saw Selena before coming here, and after the bath and clean clothes, she looked completely different. Selena is very beautiful. She instantly took a liking to the girl as soon as she saw her bright smile. There was no greed in her eyes, only a glint of weariness and gratitude. She wondered how a teenage girl who had been on the streets since childhood could have that look in her eyes. It was hard for Martha to put her finger on it. She seemed mature, world-wise beyond her years. Yet, there was that glint of curiosity and playfulness that reminded her of Bruce. Martha looked toward her husband and gave a slight nod. All right, Thomas nodded in agreement. He knows that his son wouldn't just bring someone home or do something without a good reason. Bruce is a responsible boy. He has always been since his childhood, a sharp brain and more mature than other kids his age. Thomas trusts his son's judgment. Besides, this is the first time he has shown interest in someone of his age. Having someone of his age around will help him grow emotionally. And maybe he will start looking outside his own world. Martha giggled. Since you brought her here, she is your responsibility, okay? Bruce nodded with a smile. Yes, Mom. Oh, I need your help, Dad. He looked at his father, Selena's sister Maggie. I promised her that I would reunite them together. Maggie is adopted. I need your connections to track her down. And I want to provide Selena with proper education as a start. She needs tutors and teachers to guide her. Thomas nodded with a chuckle. Leave it to me. I will help you arrange everything: tutors, teachers, and Maggie. Bruce smiled brightly. Thanks, Dad. You are the best. Thomas patted Bruce's head with a proud smile. His son was growing up. And thank you, Mom, for that slight nod, he grinned. H.A.A. Sharp eyes as ever, huh? She chuckled. The Wayne couple spent the rest of the day discussing Selena's arrangements. They decided to hire private tutors and teachers to educate her and enroll her in a reputed school. Dinner table. Later that evening, Everyone gathered at the dining table. Bruce, Thomas, Martha, and Selena. Selena wore a simple white shirt and black skirt. She nervously fidgeted with the hem of her shirt, not knowing what to do. She has never attended such a lavish dinner before. Relax, Selena. This isn't your last supper, Bruce teased her lightheartedly. He knows she is uncomfortable attending a rich family dinner for the first time. But he felt a weird tingle in his heart, seeing her cute and awkward expression, her flushed cheeks, nervous fidgeting, and occasional glances at him. That's the mayor. I have never seen such food in my life. I have no idea where to start. And you want me to relax? Selena whispered loudly with a red face, embarrassed at Bruce's teasing. Thomas and Martha chuckled hearing their conversation. Relax, dear. This is your home now. Don't worry about anything, Martha assured Selena with a friendly smile. And don't hold back, or we will be sad, dear. Ha ha ha. Selena couldn't help but laugh awkwardly. It has been a long time since she felt accepted and appreciated. All her life, she faced physical and mental abuse from her father, then beaten and bashed by people after getting caught stealing. Homeless kids have it rough. She never belonged to any place or group. But Bruce brought her to this lavish house. Everyone welcomed her with open arms. It wasn't something she was used to. Without knowing, droplets of tears rolled down her rosy cheeks as she took a bite of the roasted lamb. It was so tender and juicy. She never tasted meat as delicious as this. Bruce smiled, sensing her happiness and relief. Thomas and Martha noticed Selena's tearful reaction and exchanged glances. It must be hard, Thomas sighed internally. I tried so hard to make sure the street kids are taken care of. It would seem someone isn't doing their job properly. Orlando. You better prepare yourself for an answer. After the dinner, Bruce took Selena to give her a tour around the Wayne Manor. They started from the garden and the greenhouse, where she saw an assortment of colorful flowers. She saw beautiful butterflies fluttering around and even a small pond filled with fish. It was something she never saw in her entire life. Even in the night, the manor garden looks like heaven. Selena's eyes went toward the treehouse that Bruce and Thomas built together when Bruce was only 6 years old. Is that a real treehouse? It isn't a prop or something like that, is it? She asked with sparkling eyes. Bruce nodded with a smile, leading her toward it. Dad built it, but the design is mine, he boasted proudly. It's too dark to climb now, maybe tomorrow morning. Selena nodded excitedly. Okay. You want to see something cool? He asked mischievously. She nodded curiously with a smile. Bruce led her deeper into the garage where the Batmobile his father made for him stands proudly, sleek matte black body with LED lights shining underneath. Wow, what is it? She looked confused, excited, and a little clueless at the same time. A Halloween-themed car? Bruce almost choked upon hearing her words, Halloween-themed car. He burst out laughing. Selena pouted angrily. What's so funny? Stop laughing. He wiped the tears of laughter and calmed down before clearing his throat. It's the most advanced car with insane armor-plated bulletproof body, stealth mode, retractable wheels, smoke bombs, machine guns, turbo engine, etc. Although the idea and blueprint are mine, Dad made it for me. Do you like it? He boasted proudly. Selena's jaw dropped. A car with so many functions. Cool, she mumbled absent-mindedly. If you finish your studies and all, I will make you even a better car for you, he teased her lightly. Selena stared at Bruce. A car especially for me? Is this a dream? Or am I dead already? Bruce chuckled, seeing her dumbfounded expression, and led her toward her room. The room next to his. What? You don't like cars? He asked teasingly. Selena snapped out and shook her head furiously. No, that's not it. I just couldn't believe an 18-year-old boy like you could think of making such things. Don't be surprised just yet. He opened the door to her room. There is more to come. Here, this is your room. Selena widened her eyes. It's much bigger than the apartment she shared with Maggie during their orphanage days. Her eyes went toward the bed and wardrobe. They looked so soft and fluffy. This room cannot be compared to the makeshift cardboard beds that she slept in the past. Filthy blankets and dusty mattresses. Bruce walked toward the bed before jumping onto it. Try it, he called out to her with a grin. Selena hesitated for a bit before walking toward the bed and jumping onto it. Soft. She squealed excitedly. A genuine smile bloomed on her face. Bruce couldn't help but stare at her dazzling smile. Beautiful, he thought subconsciously. Selina blushed hearing Bruce's murmur. Did he say something just now? Did you say something? She asked shyly. He quickly averted his gaze and jumped off the bed. Nothing. I said nothing. Anyway, I will let you freshen up and sleep early. Dad will help bring your sister here. So, rest up. She nodded with a smile. Thank you, Bruce. He flashed a bright smile. Sleep well, Selina. As he was about to leave the room, she called him. I do like cars, but I think bikes are cool too, she blurted out. Her cheeks flushed pink. Bruce stopped in his tracks and glanced back at Selina with a chuckle. Bikes, huh? I will keep that in mind. He left the room with a smile. Selina is really interesting. Bruce had promised Selina that he would use his connections to help reunite her with her younger sister Maggie. Over the course of several days, Thomas Wayne, the mayor of Gotham City, worked tirelessly to locate Maggie's whereabouts. He used his resources and connections to find out which church had adopted Maggie. Eventually, he managed to track her down to a local church-run orphanage. On a bright morning, Bruce and Selina found themselves standing outside the church. They had just arrived, and the anticipation was palpable. Bruce was there to provide emotional support to Selina and ensure that the reunion went smoothly. He could see the mix of excitement and nervousness in her eyes. Are you ready, Selina? Bruce asked, offering a reassuring smile. Yeah, she nodded, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and fear. It had been so long since she had seen her sister, and she couldn't help but wonder how Maggie had been all these years. The doors had a large sign over them that read, St. Mary's Home for Children. As they entered the orphanage, a nun who was busily sorting donations greeted them. She wore the usual garb of a nun, with a cross around her neck, and had a kind smile. How can I help you, children? Do you need any assistance? Sister Martem asked, smiling gently at the pair. Yes. We're looking for a girl named Magdalene Kyle, Bruce replied politely. The mayor has called you yesterday. Remember? Oh yes. Come right this way. She nodded and led them to a small, cozy room where they would meet Maggie. Selina's hands trembled as they waited for her sister to arrive. Please wait here for a moment. I will call her. She left the room. Where is that feisty girl now? You look too nervous. It doesn't suit you. Relax. Bruce teased her, trying to lift up the mood. She chuckled lightly. I am relaxed. Not everyone could get an opportunity like this. So your sister, he looked toward her nervous face, does she know about that her sister is a street thief? Selina completed his sentence with a bitter smile. No, she doesn't know. Bruce nodded. It's understandable. As they waited, Selina couldn't help but fidget, her nerves getting the best of her. She had spent years worrying about Maggie, wondering if she was safe and cared for. The guilt of leaving her sister had always weighed on her, but now, finally, she had a chance to make things right. After a few minutes that felt like an eternity, the door creaked open, and in walked a young girl with red hair and brown eyes. She looked around the room, a bit apprehensive, until her eyes landed on Selina. Maggie, Selina whispered, tears brimming in her eyes as she rushed forward to embrace her sister. Maggie froze for a moment, clearly surprised, but then her eyes widened in recognition and she let out a gasp. Sis? Is it really you? Selina nodded, tears streaming down her face as she hugged her tightly. Yes, it's me. I'm here, Maggie. I found you. Tears welled up in Maggie's eyes too as she hugged her sister back just as tightly. I missed you so much. I thought I'd never see you again. I missed you too, sis, Selina whispered, her voice choked with emotion. I promised you I'd come back for you, didn't I? The redhead nodded, a small smile breaking through her tears. You did. And you kept your promise. Selina pulled back and cupped Maggie's face in her hands, examining her sister's features as if committing them to memory. You've grown into such a beautiful young lady. Maggie blushed, still in disbelief that her sister was here with her. You've changed too. You look different. Bruce stood there watching the touching reunion with a warm feeling in his heart. Seeing Selina so happy filled him with joy, and he knew that this was a moment she would cherish forever. And with this, her loyalty for him would also increase even more. Bruce smiled inwardly. He had planned everything perfectly. Maggie turned to Bruce, curious. Who's this guy, sis? Selina turned to introduce him. This is Bruce Wayne. It's all thanks to him that I found you. Maggie's eyes widened in shock. Wayne? As in the Waynes. Bruce chuckled, amused by her reaction. Nice to meet you, Miss Kyle. He extended his hand towards Maggie. She shook his hand hesitantly. "And nice to meet you too, Mr. Wayne." Selina smiled, her eyes glistening with happiness, as she spoke to her sister. "Maggie, we're going to live with Bruce and his family. They've adopted us. We won't have to worry about anything anymore. We'll have a proper home, food, and education." Maggie's eyes widened in astonishment. "Adopted? Really?" She nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, really. It's like a dream come true. We're going to have a better life, sis." Tears of joy welled up in Maggie's eyes as she realized the magnitude of the change in her life. "I can't believe it. How did you do it? Why are you helping us?" Bruce answered, smiling kindly. "Just because I took a liking to a certain someone and couldn't see them drowning in sadness anymore." His gaze lingered on Selina. She blushed slightly under his intense gaze. Maggie turned to her sister, confused. "Drowning in sadness? What does he mean?" Selina chuckled awkwardly. "Shut it," averting her gaze. "It's nothing important, sis. Let's go home, shall we?" Bruce laughed, amused. All right. I will be waiting in the car. You help your sister pack up her belongings." With those words, he exited the room, leaving the sisters alone to catch up. Maggie looked at Selina curiously. "You and him. Are you two?" Selina shook her head vehemently, blushing furiously. "No. Of course not." Maggie giggled mischievously. "Your expression tells me otherwise." She rolled her eyes. "He just offered me to become his future assistant, and I took it. So, stop teasing me and start packing up your stuff." Maggie grinned impishly. "Whatever you say, sis." But inside, she was glad Selina deserved happiness after all that she had gone through. And if Bruce Wayne made her sister happy, then she was all for it. Bishop's office. Bruce sat across from Bishop. "Here you go, a small donation." Bruce handed Bishop a check worth $200 million, enough to rebuild St. Mary's Home for Children completely. Bishop's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when he saw the amount. "Why, you sure? This amount is... It's too much. I'm not giving you this just for fun. Rebuild this place properly with good teachers, better facilities, and better security. Also, hire some nurses and doctors. I don't want to see any homeless kid committing crimes out on the streets ever again. Got it?" Bruce narrowed his eyes dangerously. Bishop gulped nervously. The boy before him was dangerous. His piercing glance made him shudder. He nodded. "Of course, sir. I will do my best." "Oh, the election is nearing, isn't it?" he reminded Bishop. "Yes, sir. It is." Bishop confirmed. "This is a church and an orphanage, isn't it?" Bruce leaned forward, his demeanor intimidating Bishop further. "Why, yes, sir." He stuttered, sweating bullets. "You know how to earn public sympathy, right?" he asked. Bishop nodded frantically. "Good. Might as well whisper among your staff about how good is Thomas Wayne, helping the church and orphans. Spread a rumor. Tell the truth." He pointed at the check on the table. "It's not like I am asking you to tell a lie. Tell the truth in your own way. I am sure you can take care of the rest, yes?" Bruce smirked. Bishop understood what he meant. He nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Wayne." All right then. Farewell." He stood up to leave. "Oh, and don't tell my father that I told you to spread the rumor. Say that you came up with the idea yourself or something." Bruce gave a slight nod. Bishop got the message. He bowed respectfully. "Yes, Mr. Wayne. Even without you saying anything, I would have done it myself. I swear upon God." Bruce smirked. Bishop was a smart man. He wouldn't disappoint him. Outside, Bruce entered the car. He took the seat beside Alfred, who was in the driver's seat. Selina and Maggie soon came out carrying Maggie's luggage. They placed it inside the trunk and got inside the car too. "Ready to go home, girls?" Bruce asked, smiling. Selina and Maggie nodded excitedly. "Yes. Now that everything is taken care of, it's time to train this weak-ass body." Bruce thought he had plans for the future. "Alfred, drive us home," Bruce ordered. The butler started the engine and drove away. Third-person POV. Alfred bustled around the Wayne Manor on a sunny Sunday morning, preparing for the upcoming party. The event was a celebration of Bruce's remarkable recovery after his recent incident. He knew the Wayne family and their guests expected nothing but the best, and it was his duty to ensure that every detail was perfect. As he arranged the tables, he couldn't help but reflect on the tumultuous events that had unfolded over the past week. The breakout in the Arkham Asylum, and Bruce's encounter with Selina Kyle had brought about significant changes. The girl's resilience and potential had caught Bruce's eye, and Alfred couldn't deny that she had an air of uniqueness about her. He also considered the reunion of Selina with her sister, Maggie, a touching moment. Their story was a stark reminder of the harsh realities faced by so many children in Gotham City. Alfred felt a sense of pride that the Wayne family could make a positive impact on their lives. Returning to the present, Alfred meticulously set the dining table for the brunch. The crystal glasses gleamed in the morning sunlight, and the silverware sparkled. He glanced at the watch. "They are 3 hours late," he mumbled under his breath. Alfred knew that punctuality was of utmost importance when hosting such gatherings, so he couldn't afford any delays in the wine delivery. He decided to personally check on the matter to ensure everything would be in order for the evening. With a quick glance around the dining area to make sure everything else was in place, he made his way to the rear entrance of the manor. He stepped outside, the warm sun washing over him. The garden was in full bloom, with colorful flowers and vibrant greenery creating a picturesque setting for the party. He pulled out his phone from his pocket and dialed the number of the wine delivery service. As the phone rang, he admired the flowers in the garden, meticulously cared for by the gardeners. The roses, daisies, and tulips added a touch of elegance to the already grand atmosphere of Wayne Manor. The call was answered promptly by a representative of the delivery service. Alfred maintained his characteristic calm and polite demeanor as he inquired about the status of their delivery. "Good morning, this is Alfred Pennyworth from Wayne Manor," he began, his voice steady and professional. "I had scheduled a wine delivery for today's brunch. I was wondering about the status of that order. We seem to be running a bit behind schedule." The representative on the other end of the line quickly checked their records and offered an explanation. "I apologize for the delay, Mr. Pennyworth. There seems to be a minor logistical issue with one of the vehicles. It's currently en route and should arrive at Wayne Manor within the next hour." Alfred nodded, acknowledging the explanation. "Very well, thank you for the update. We'll expect the delivery within the hour. Punctuality is crucial for our event." The representative assured him that they would expedite the delivery to ensure it arrived on time. Alfred thanked them and ended the call. Returning his phone to his pocket, he was about to walk back inside, satisfied that the matter was being addressed. Before he could take another step, his eyes fell on Selina, who was about to climb up the treehouse. He quickly walked over to her. Alfred cleared his throat and approached Selina as she prepared to climb up to the treehouse. "Ah, Miss Selina," he began, his voice carrying a tone of mild concern. "I must inform you that the treehouse hasn't been used in quite some time. It might not be safe up there." Selina paused and turned to look at him, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Oh, don't worry, Alfred. I'm fixing it up. It's going to be a surprise for Bruce." Alfred raised an eyebrow. "A surprise, you say?" She nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, I thought it would be a nice gift for him. He mentioned that he built it when he was a child, so I wanted to make it special again. Last time we tried to enter, the door came off, so, trying to fix it up. Although I know it's kinda childish to do it. We are all grown up after all." He couldn't help but smile at Selina's eagerness to contribute to the Wayne family in her own unique way. "That's a thoughtful gesture, Miss Selina. Just be careful while you're up there." Selina flashed him a mischievous grin. "I've climbed far trickier places than this, Alfred. I'll be just fine." "I will send someone just in case," he insisted, a hint of amusement in his tone. "If you insist," she agreed before beginning her ascent. As Alfred watched her skillfully maneuver through the branches, he couldn't help but be impressed by her agility. "She is like a cat," he thought to himself as he went back inside. Selina's POV, Selina made her way up to the treehouse, and after inspecting the door, she managed to pry it open. A cloud of dust wafted into the air as the door swung open, revealing the interior of the treehouse. Cough. Cough. She coughed as the dust invaded her nostrils. After a brief pause, she stepped into the treehouse. She carefully surveyed the area, her eyes falling on the old wooden furniture and the toys scattered across the floor. Her gaze landed on a faded photograph sitting on top of a small table. She picked it up and studied the image, a faint smile playing on her lips. The photograph showed a young Bruce Wayne, dressed in a school uniform, posing alongside his parents. "Huh? What's this?" Her eyes fell on Bruce's old Batmobile toy he made when he was just a kid. With curiosity, she picked it up and inspected it closely. She couldn't help but marvel at the detailed craftsmanship. It was clear that someone had put a lot of effort into building the toy. She looked around, noting the faded wallpaper and the cobwebs covering the ceiling. It was clear that no one had set foot in the treehouse in a long time. Well, Selena, she took out a big handkerchief and wrapped it around her nose. Time to clean this mess up. It's time for a new look, she muttered to herself. She grabbed a broom from the corner of the room and began sweeping away the dust and dirt. A few hours later. All right, things look clean enough. She wiped her hands on her shirt. Her clothes were covered in dirt and dust, but she didn't care. All that mattered was that the treehouse was now clean, and the only things that needed to be fixed were the rotten wooden door and a few planks. She glanced at her watch. Oh, gotta run, she mumbled, realizing that she had spent too much time cleaning the place. It's already 4 p.m. There are only a few hours left before the party. She swiftly climbed down the tree, jumped off, and made her way back to the manor. As she entered the manor, she saw Alfred, who was talking with two men. Ah, Miss Selena. May I introduce you to our delivery service team? Alfred introduced the two men as he handed her a piece of paper. Would you mind checking the delivery items with them? Oh. He noticed that she was covered in dust. I guess you are on your way to clean up? She nodded. No worries, Alfred. I will check the items and then take a bath, okay? Alfred smiled. Thank you, Miss Selena. You're a lifesaver. She grinned. No need to thank me. I'm just doing my part. With that, she went to the backyard and met with the delivery team. Nice to meet you guys, she greeted the two men with a smile. Now let's see what you have brought, shall we? The two men nodded and began unloading boxes of wine from their truck. Selena watched as the boxes were placed on the ground. She took out the piece of paper Alfred had given her and began checking the inventory against the boxes. As the two men continued to unload the wine, Selena noticed a slight discrepancy in the inventory. Hey, I think we're missing a box, she said, pointing to the empty space on the inventory sheet. The two men glanced at each other, confusion evident on their faces. That's odd. We're supposed to deliver 10 boxes of wine, not 9, one of them replied. Shit. How could you mess up with the delivery, man? You know it's going to the mayor's house tonight, the other man retorted. Selena sighed. Don't just stand there like morons. Run back to your shop and bring me a new box. The party will start in a few hours, and we can't afford any delays. The two men exchanged worried glances before hurrying back to their truck. Selena shook her head in disbelief. These types of mistakes happen all the time. Meanwhile, Bruce's room. Finally, Bruce breathed a sigh of relief as he locked the room. He looked and kissed the wine bottle he had hidden under his arm. He had successfully smuggled a bottle of red wine from the cellar without Alfred noticing it. He opened the bottle and smelled it. Ah, delicious, he smiled as the smell of the wine filled his nostrils. Ever since he was reborn in this world, he had been dying to taste some good wine. Since he was a kid back then, he never got the chance to drink alcohol, but now he could finally indulge in his passion. Bruce sat on the bed, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. He could feel his heart racing with anticipation. Slowly, he brought the bottle to his lips and took a sip. The wine's flavor exploded in his mouth, sending waves of pleasure throughout his body. He savored the taste, letting it linger on his tongue. Suddenly, his eyes shot open as Selena burst into the room, startling him. Selena. He almost choked as the wine spilled on his shirt. Whoa, Bruce, chill out. I just came to tell you that your mother is calling you downstairs, she chuckled. He stood up, wiping his shirt. What? Why did you barge into my room without knocking? Never mind me. Her eyes went toward the red stain on his white shirt and his right hand behind his back. Then she noticed the cork, lying on the bed. Bruce, were you drinking wine? She asked suspiciously. He froze for a second before replying, No, I wasn't. I want a sip, Selena smirked, walking towards him. Let me have a sip of that wine. You nuts, not now. Meet me on the roof after the party ends. He hid the wine bottle in the secret space under his bed. Her smirk grew wider. Okay, it's a deal then. Don't forget it, Bruce. Whatever, next time knock. Now get out of my room, he grumbled.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.